communication, particularly in social media platforms. This includes that a member may not bring Parliament into disrepute. A member who is addressing another member or a member of the public on social media platforms must not use derogatory, racist, or sexist language or content. This issue for all of us so that we do appreciate as members of Parliament, but it is also important to make sure that we do not bring the House into disrepute. But secondly, where we may be communicating on our social media platform, it's important that we guard the language that we use, because that also can bring this House into disrepute. So any other member of Parliament may actually bring that matter, even though it might have been an issue that you were using your social media platform, can be brought into the Ethics Committee. So I just want all of us to be aware so that in future we do appreciate the responsibility that we hold. Honourable members, we are elected to the Assembly by the people of South Africa to champion their interests. Our people expect us to do this with vigor, determination, and dignity. This is important in a democracy, but especially one whose history has been characterized by systemic oppression and inhumanity, attitudes which will continue to haunt us. The Code of Ethics was devised to unambiguously set out the code of conduct standards to which we must adhere to. In this context, I will proceed to address Honourable Adams. Honourable Member, if you can stand. I hope you can understand why I cannot repeat the remarks to which this report refers to. They are simply repugnant, wholly unbefitting of high office and this institution, and therefore it is inexcusable. As a public representative, there are many avenues available to you to raise grievance, to argue your case, both in Parliament and elsewhere, without recourse to vulgarity and sexism. As such, the penalties imposed are entirely justifiable, and you owe this House an unconditional apology. I'll now ask Honourable Adams to apologize to this House. Honourable Adams?
I will apologize, Speaker. I withdraw. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate your apology, and I hope that all other members indeed will be able to attend to these matters that have been raised. In addition, the reprimand and the public apology that you have just given, there is also other penalty in respect to the conduct which relates to financial penalty, as you would appreciate. Honourable members, this brings this matter to an end in respect of Honourable Adams. I'll now ask Honourable Marupin Lydia Ramokgopa to stand. Honourable members, Honourable Ramokgopa was not in the House when we gave the report on ethics with regards to late submission on the disclosures. Order, honourable members. This House adopted the committee report concerning members who have contravened the Code of Ethical Conduct and disclosure of members' interest on 26 June 2025. Honourable M.L. Ramokgopa did tender an apology which I announced to the House due to an international engagement that she had to attend. So she wasn't absent without an apology. As you'd appreciate, the report recommended that together with the fines, the members will be reprimanded in the House. A reprimand in the House is aimed at ensuring that discipline is meted out fairly transparently and consistently. Honorable Member Ramuhuba, before you began to perform your function as a Member of Parliament, you pledged obedience to the Constitution. You also pledged to obey, respect, and uphold all the law and perform your function to the best of your ability. These undertakings foster both trust between individual parliamentarians and the public, but also the status of Parliament as a preeminent institution of the state. The Code of Ethical Conduct and Disclosure of Members' Interests provides a set of values for members. Among other requirements, the Code obligates members annually to declare their financial interest in a public register. This allows the public to confirm that no member may have been exposed to a conflict of interest. Unfortunately, Honorable Ramahupa, you have failed to disclose your financial interest for 2024 in due time. It is apparent from the committee report that you were provided fair opportunity to present this, and unfortunately, you were not able to do so. I therefore want to indicate that this is not acceptable. Order, Honorable Tsepo. Honorable Tsepo. I also want to appreciate that even if you might have missed the deadline, that you will continue to still fulfill that obligation. I also note, as indicated above, that there are financial penalties that have been imposed on you, and I'm sure you will comply. I trust that this reprimand sends a message not only to you, but to all of us as members to live up to our obligations and ensure that they comply with the code. I've now concluded the reprimand, and you may take your seat. Thank you. Honorable members, you are not assisting the speaker. You are not. Because we all know that in respect of this reprimand, we do not ask individual members to apologize. Honorable members, the fact that the honorable member did come to the House, it's serious enough accepting that she is remorseful of her conduct. I will now ask the Secretary to read the seventh order.
Consideration of the report of the Standing Committee on Appropriations on the Eskom Debt Relief Amendment Bill.
I now recognize the Honorable Chief Whip.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. I move that the report be adopted.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Honorable.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Please note the objection of MK Party.
Thank you very much. Honorable Reddy, you were so quick. I was still coming to that, but thank you very much. Are there any other objections? Well, Honorable Paulson.
Thank you, Speaker. Note the objection of the EFF.
Thank you very much. Objection of the EFF is noted. There are no other objections that have been received other than the two parties. I will now ask the Secretary to read the eighth order. Order, honorable members. She had made a request. No, honorable members, all of you, when you write your apologies, you never ask me to read them in public. Honorable members, I am very excited that you actually are trying to hold each other accountable. I'm sure you will do so all the time, regardless of which side of the house. Honorable members, I'm sorry, I omitted to indicate that with the two objections, the report have been adopted. I now ask the Secretary to read the eighth order.
First reading debate, Eskom Debt Relief Amendment Bill.
Thank you very much, Honorable Maimane.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Honorable members, Bagaetsho Dumelang. It is a great privilege to be able to table this Eskom Debt Relief Amendment Bill. It takes place well within a context where Eskom used to be a site for state capture, where in fact for many instances we used to live in a world of load shedding, whilst many South Africans still face load reduction. But none of us members can deny the fact that the crippling years of load shedding, the closing of factories, the hollowing out of townships, and suffocating small businesses is something that we are fast moving away from. Eskom indeed can become that energy provider that is able to demonstrate to the people of South Africa that the reforms that we make are able to in fact turn a corner. The Eskom Debt Relief Amendment Bill is more than just a funding instrument. It is indeed a commitment to recovery, to structured oversight, and irreversible reform. And as Parliament, we must continue to act as constitutional guardians of public money, ensuring that no cent is spent without consequence or no intervention is made without reform. I want to affirm that there's been incredible progress since 2023 when this act was put forward. The original Eskom debt in 2023 committed 254 billion rands over 3 years, but with fairly strict conditions. For that there would be no new borrowing, no misuse of funds, and a focus on transmission and distribution investment. I want to affirm that as Eskom have carried the work, revenue has increased by 16%, diesel spending has decreased, ultimately profit before tax has reached 34 billion rands, and the debt at Eskom is something that is starting to decline when you look at their cash revenues. These gains are not accidental. They take an incredible leadership and a team that is committed at Eskom. And so when we look at this bill, honorable members, our considerations is the fact that the allocation that was done for 2025-2026 be adjusted from 40 billion rands to 80.2 billion rands and introduce 10 billion rands additional in 2028-2029. It effectively means that Eskom will be sending less money back, and ultimately demonstrating the fact that it is beginning to manage its own finances. This is an important issue. It demonstrates that this is not about technicalities. It is about us hardening our fiscal responsibilities. I do want to caution, in the better space of financial space that Eskom is in, let's not deny the fact that municipalities still pose a significant risk to Eskom. As municipal debt has now moved to 94.6 billion rands, with cities like Johannesburg and Tshwane failing to be able to fulfill their financial obligations. As a portfolio committee, this matter was debated deeply. And some of the issues that we want to raise is the fact that Eskom needs to explore prepaid bulk electricity supply. It needs to ensure that DAA agreements are entered into, and we need to ensure that Eskom's financial viability is not crippled by municipalities. We're also clear that as we table this Eskom Debt Amendment Bill, that the unbundling of Eskom into generation, transmission, and distribution, the three entities, must be accelerated and must be put forward in transparency, so that members of the South Africa are able to get a clear and enforceable unbundling timeline, so we understand how the assets will be split going forward. That equally so, Eskom needs to be committed to a process of the just energy transition, ensuring energy moves not just to green, but also equitable, job-creating, and developmental-driven objectives. As a committee, we'd like to make a number of recommendations, honorable members. That at first, Treasury and the Department of Electricity monitor and enforce compliance with all conditions under the 2023 Act. That Eskom submit quarterly reports to this Parliament, as they usually do. That clarity be provided on how loan-to-equity conversions will be handled. That Eskom table a clear plan, costed plan, and financing for the just energy transition. And where some of the conditions that were put forward, such as selling non-core assets, be fulfilled, certainly before the maturation of the debt. And so, honorable members, as I bring this debate to a close, this input to a close, This is not just about another financing bill. It's about the early signs of improving Eskom. It's about the beginnings of saying to ourselves, can we then take energy supply in South Africa and make it something available to all citizens? That no citizen will live in the township and ultimately not have electricity, and that we keep a grid that is stable. And as chair of SCOPA, I'd like to clearly set out that our job is not just to bail out Eskom, but to hold it to account, to make sure it gets better, to make sure energy is secure. And therefore, I commit this report to be adopted by this House. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Sekede.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Electricity, like water and logistics, are key inputs and drivers of the country's economy. Our point of departure for Eskom Debt Relief Amendment Bill remains to ensure that the utility is able to ensure a reliable supply of electricity for the country, to end load shedding and improve generation capacity, to ensure inclusive economic development and job creation. This is in the national economic interest for the development and transformation of the country. The Eskom Debt Relief and Eskom Relief Debt Amendment Bill are an attempt by the government to resolve South Africa's risk premium and the crisis of the inadequate electricity supply, which have led to load shedding, and to ensure that the entity is a going concern, to enable it to carry out its mandate to the nation, that is security of electricity supply. Eskom credit rating is assessed under government-related entity criteria, which considers the strong links between Eskom and South African government. Therefore, Eskom credit ratings are directly linked to sovereign debt ratings of the country, as government guarantees the debt of Eskom due to its status as a state-owned entity. Government support, including guarantees, plays a significant role in determining Eskom creditworthiness and rating by agencies like Standard & Poor's and Fitch. The government guarantees assist in the reduction of Eskom's borrowing costs and improve the financial stability, which positively impact the credit ratings of the entity. Almost 350 billion of Eskom's debt liabilities were government guaranteed debt, which was at risk of default due to the fact that Eskom's liability exceeded revenue. This would have had a negative impact on the sovereign credit ratings of the country. Therefore, failure to introduce this bill could have created a sovereign debt crisis for the country. This would have also negatively impact on the sovereign credit ratings of the country and increase the cost of borrowing, ultimately affecting cost of capital to the country. Moreover, this would have also negatively impact funds available for other government programs, given the country's fiscal constraints due to the revenue shortfalls, rising public debt, and high debt service costs. Eskom was unable to effectively service its 350 billion debt liabilities, while simultaneously engaging in critical maintenance as well as attempting to recover from state capture and corruption in the new build plants, namely Medupi and Kusile, which had budget overruns. The recapitalization of Eskom by the shareholder is based on the fact that the entity cannot be passed from a generation, transmission, and distribution point of view, as it supplies base load power with economic of scale to the country, which is also complemented by IPP generated electricity. The lack of cost-effective tariffs is also one of the main reasons for Eskom's excessive debt burden. Together with the reliance on debt to fund the new build program, Medupi and Kulise power stations, and this reliance on debt is a symptom of low capitalization on the part of shareholder or an inadequate tariff part, which leads to the high electricity tariffs. Government support for Eskom cannot be taken for granted, as the funding is not a bailout in the form of a grant, but is based on conditionality in that the GNU expect improved economic efficiency performance, including cost reduction. Revenues need to be directed at ensuring expansion of generation, transmission, and distribution capacity. The positive impact of the legislation has been that Standard & Poor gave Eskom a positive credit rating, and Fitch affirmed Eskom credit rating at B with a stable outlook, acknowledging the support provided by the government through this legislation. However, this debt relief bill was not geared towards only solving the debt liability, but also to ensure that the entity can fulfill its mandate of energy security. While finding through this bill ensured that there was no default on debt, the aim of the debt relief through recapitalization was also aimed at ending load shedding, increasing generation capacity by reducing unplanned shutdowns through maintenance and the fixing of defects at Medupi and Kusile power stations. This bill contributes significantly towards addressing Eskom's excessive debt burden and improve the utility liquidity, thereby freeing up cash for critical maintenance that improve plant availability, which in turn reduces load shedding. Since the introduction of the debt relief bill, Eskom has spent 25 billion yearly from its own revenue to improve maintenance. It has also enabled the entity to show a modest operational profit. Importantly, Eskom energy availability factor reached an all-time low of 48%, but has since improved to some 68%, which means increased generation capacity. Whilst there are some who merely reject recapitalization of Eskom as part of a political game or political narrative, the ANC government in the 6th Parliament sought to renew Eskom through its restructuring and to ensure improved performance to end load shedding and provide security of supply of electricity to drive economic growth and job creation. The amendment to the debt relief bill is a continuation of that part. Eskom also needs to ensure that this bill that enables increased revenue also translates into lower tariffs to attract investment and to bring relief to the poorer indigenous households. The ANC supports the Eskom Debt Relief Amendment Bill. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mwali.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members.
With acting Chief Whip of the MK, must be disciplined now. We are sitting there.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members.
It's very nice. Actually, buy this from my.
Honorable Mhlauli, can you please switch off your gadget? Please mute.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, people of this country, as MK Party, we rise to express our dissatisfaction and reaffirm our stance on opposing the Eskom Debt Relief Amendment Bill. The bill being debated today proposes an increase in Eskom allocation from 40 billion to 80 billion, for the 2025-2026 financial year, with an additional 10 billion set aside for the 2028-2029 financial year. Furthermore, it seeks to convert these allocations into equity upon Eskom's fulfillment of certain conditions. As MK Party, we understand that operations like Eskom Debt Relief Amendment Bill often appear insignificant on the surface, presented as routine financial intervention. However, in reality, this bill represents a continuation of failed policies that reward non-performance in certain municipalities while punishing those that comply. It is reported that municipalities currently owe more than 90 billion a debt they have failed to repay despite consuming electricity. Year after year, Eskom has reported these areas, yet none of the so-called proposed solutions for repayment have yielded any positive results. Instead of holding defaulting municipalities accountable, the DA-led government of national unity now proposes to subsidize their debt through Eskom and effectively rewarding failure. When one looks at this bill, it clearly institutionalizes a dangerous culture of perverse incentives. It signals to municipalities that non-payment of debts results in government intervention and financial relief. Meanwhile, municipalities that honor their payment obligations receive no recognition, no support, no relief. This initiative sends a wrong message that responsible governance is irrelevant. Instead, the bill encourages fiscal delinquency at an expense of discipline and accountability. As MK Party, we believe that there's a lack of transparency on the implementation and the structuring of the relief. The Financial and Fiscal Commission itself raised concerns about the fiscal ambiguities embedded in the Eskom bailouts. While this may seem like a rhetorical question, it demands a clear answer. Is this money being transferred as an operational subsidy for Eskom, or is it simply disguised bailout for municipalities? Instead of Eskom enforcing strict and practical debt collection methods, the government is now transferring Eskom municipal debt burden to the taxpayers, which is unfair and unsustainable. It is not the national government's duty to repeatedly rescue municipalities that refuse to meet their obligations. Furthermore, Speaker, the bill fails to impose strict conditions tied to reforms and infrastructure investment. The debt relief without enforceable operational improvements is a short-sighted policy that ignores Eskom's core structural weaknesses, governance failures, corruption, and poor leadership. Not merely debt are at the heart of Eskom's crisis. It is the MK Party's view that Eskom does not need another bailout. What it needs is enforced accountability, effective debt collection strategies, and strategic restructuring. Eskom must be empowered to collect direct from non-paying municipalities. Bypassing corrupt or inefficient intermediaries, defaulting municipalities must face strict penalties, including administration, revenue ring-fencing, and the mechanisms to enforce compliance. The MK Party therefore rejects this bill, and we reject continued bailouts that reward failure and undermine compliance, ignore the need for transparency and structural reform. This bill benefits failing municipalities at an expense of responsible taxpayers and entrenches Eskom dependency on the government's assistance. For these reasons, the MK Party votes against this Eskom debt relief amendment bill. I thank you.
Thank you. Honorable K.H. Wakelin.
Honourable Speaker, Members of Parliament, the Eskom Debt Relief Amendment Bill will result in a final 70 billion rand bailout that was approved in 23 to be split into two parts, 40 billion for 25-26 to pay off the debt maturing in April 26 and 10 billion in 28-29 for debt maturing in May 28. This is as a result of better financial position of Eskom The net result is that Eskom will receive about 24 billion rand less and reduce the total borrowing need. This support will gradually turn into government ownership of Eskom as conditions are met. In summary, this means Eskom receives less government money, which helps reduce the country's debt and interest cost. But it also requires Eskom to improve its performance and governance to fully benefit from this support and become a sustainable and reliable utility. This will save the country 24 billion, an important step forward compared to the wasteful spending during the 9 Zuma years. It's also important to mention that 6 years and 5 High Court rulings later, a member of this House still owes Eskom 10 million rand in pension money, plus interest. Honourable Molefe, we want you to pay back the money.
Honourable Wycliffe, remember you speak through the chair. You don't address each other as members.
My apologies, Speaker. While Eskom's financial crisis is not yet over, recent efforts to restructure its debt aim to reduce not only the debt service cost, but also the capital amount that's owed by Eskom. Eskom, our state-owned power utility, has accumulated over 420 billion rand in debt, a reflection of governance failures, mismanagement, and political interference. This debt weighs heavily on our economy, raises borrowing costs, and threatening our fiscal stability. What does this mean to all in South Africans? Eskom's massive debt pile...
Honourable Wakelin, can you please take a seat? What is the point of...
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Will the Speaker on the podium please tell us when his party is going to pay back the money of all the wealth they've stolen from this land, taking it overseas?
Honourable Reddy.
They must pay back the money,
Honourable Reddy, you are an acting chief whip of your party seated there. You must be the one who is in order. You can't be out of order. And you know very well that was not a point of order. Honourable Wakelin.
Thank you, Speaker. What does this mean for the ordinary South Africans? Eskom's massive debt pile squeezes out spending to build better infrastructure, develop renewable energy, and create jobs in our communities. It's also the key driver of the massive inflation in electricity prices seen over the past 2 decades. Additionally, the plan to turn Eskom's debt around into a loan that can become equity if certain conditions are met must encourage Eskom to improve its performance and become more responsible, aiming for long-term sustainability and less reliance on government bailouts. The Democratic Alliance has many times proposed alternative measures to merit considerations. These include prioritizing renewable energy procurement and finalizing the implementation of the division of Eskom's 3 entities. However, the challenges still remain, Speaker. Madam Speaker, in a recent article in My Broadband, highlights that Eskom continues to milk the South Africans. Eskom continues to face governance issues, corruption, and operational inefficiencies. Eskom's inflated cost, inefficient operations, and failure to implement necessary reforms have shifted the burdens onto the South Africans. One example is that Eskom, by its own admission, is significantly overstaffed. 40,000 as opposed to 14,000. In addition, as reported in the World Bank, Eskom's cost per employee has more than tripled after inflation since 1994. On a matter of Eskom municipalities, Speaker, municipalities must pay their bills. There are no excuses. Treasury will now implement regulation that will force municipalities to create business units for electricity and water and to ring-fence their budget. If municipalities do not adhere to grants, no grants will flow to municipalities for further development. However, Speaker, municipalities are not the only culprits. In a recent SANEDI investigative report, revealed that both Eskom and City Power ability to measure and bill for power relies on flawed and faulty technical practices. Eskom's estimation practices that are used are not on national agreed upon NRA standards. This has resulted in Eskom underbilling City Power by about 412 gigawatts just on 6 sites. This type of outcome results in further eroding of confidence and trust, not just between the municipalities and Eskom, but also for consumers who do not trust the current system. Load shedding and disruption further complicated accurate billing and data collection. These operational faults threaten to undermine reforms in Eskom's financial sustainability. On a matter of Eskom's monopoly on South Africa's electricity market is gradually diminishing. The utilities reduced energy demand in 2024, partly due to a shift towards self-generation by consumers, has weakened its market dominance. We urge that the full restructuring of Eskom 3 divisions be up and running as soon as possible, breaking Eskom's single buy model and opening the door for market-driven electricity prices. The question is, will Eskom survive this? The question is, Honourable Minister, what is your plans about doing something about that? We take note that Eskom has appointed the new board of directors on the National Transmission Company of South Africa, the NDCSA, and we also take note of the recent appointment of Monde Bala as the CEO. We will wait with much anticipation on the changes and strategic turnaround he and his new team will bring. In the words of the current chair of Eskom, Dr. Mteti Nyati, open quote, "This government cannot pursue a business as usual approach. We need new ideas and new initiatives to unleash economic growth. This means moving away from the old ways." Close quote. I hope these words will become a reality for Eskom as well, and that the only target should be to deal with Eskom debts once and for all. In conclusion, Speaker, while the 20 billion rand saving is a positive development, it's not a silver bullet. We must ensure strict conditions are enforced, governance reforms are prioritized, and Eskom's operational efficiencies improves. Only then can we unlock the full potential of this intervention and secure a sustainable energy future for South Africa. Let us support measures that balance immediate relief with long-term reforms, because the future of our country depends on it. Thank you, Speaker. We support the bill.
Thank you, Honourable Paulson.
Thank you, Speaker. Greetings to the Commander-in-Chief, officials, commissars, fighters of the Economic Freedom Fighters. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Speaker, on Saturday, the 26th of July, the EFF will be celebrating its 12th anniversary at the Khayelitsha Rugby Stadium. EFF, the most solid voice in defense of the poor and working class in Cape Town, the Western Cape,
Honourable
South Africa.
Paulson.
You are all invited.
Honourable Paulson, can you please take your seat? There is a member with a point of order.
Thank you, Speaker. The Speaker is being drowned out by the noise over here, Speaker. I literally can't understand what he's saying.
Okay, thank you very much, Honourable Adams. When I hear that the noise drowned the Speaker, I will intervene. Thank you very much.
Speaker, the bill before the House, which is just over 120 words and no more than a paragraph, proposes an amendment to increase a previously allocated 40 billion rand to now 80 billion rand and adds a 10 billion rand allocation for the 2028-2029 financial year. This forms part of the ongoing 230 billion Eskom debt relief that was passed into law in 2023. When the initial act was passed, the EFF raised concerns about the manner in which National Treasury was approaching Eskom's problems. We rejected the so-called strict conditions set by government on Eskom because they prioritize the interests of those who loan money to Eskom over the needs of our people. The National Treasury and the Minister of Finance were not thinking about the people of Tembisa, who are saying enough is enough as they are being burdened with 126 rand electricity surcharge and that they can no longer afford the electricity. This is why the so-called Eskom debt relief was given to Eskom with a condition that the money can only be used for transmission and distribution, because these are the areas that will benefit the privatization process. Not the people of Umlazi, Nyanga and Seshego. Eskom was instructed not to use any of the money for capital and operating expenditure, even though it was clear that load shedding was caused by poor maintenance. There were individuals working day and night to ensure Eskom's collapse because they wanted Eskom to fail so that their private companies could benefit. It is clear that the National Treasury is working against the people of South Africa. Today, the ANC and DA coalition government sees nothing wrong with awarding a tender to a company chaired by the incompetent Jan Oberholzer, who was at the forefront of collapsing Eskom, alongside the equally incompetent CEO Andre de Ruyter, appointed by this incompetent ANC government. You will only you appoint incompetent people because you yourselves are incompetent. We do not understand why the Minister of Electricity even felt the need to defend the 9.5 billion battery storage tender unless Mulilo, the company awarded the tender, is part of Cyril Ramaphosa's network of family-linked businesses. Corrupt. Eskom was prohibited from borrowing new money, and the relief funds could only be used to settle existing debt. These conditions and agreements were made with those intent on collapsing Eskom against the interests of South Africans and in favor of those greedy friends of theirs. We rejected the Eskom debt relief then, and we reject it now. And on Sunday, we were vindicated when the minister himself said in an interview, Andre de Ruyter was incompetent, and that electricity is totally unaffordable for the poor and working class. What is so difficult about giving Eskom money from the public purse and instructing it to expand its generation capacity, invest in new state-owned generation projects, and provide affordable, dependable electricity? Our people need electricity, and the prices they are being charged are not sustainable. It is not their fault that Eskom is in a mess. It's the fault of this government, but the people have to pay for your mess. We have repeatedly made proposals that Eskom participate in renewable projects and bring down the cost of electricity, but they refuse because they want to make their friends wealthy at the expense of South Africans. We need more generation capacity driven by coal. We must cancel IPP agreements. We must rebuild Eskom's artisanal capacity and ramp up maintenance. Municipalities are struggling to pay Eskom debt and are simply passing these costs on to the people. This is absolute madness, driven by the ANC. We must direct the PIC and other state-owned financial development institutions such as IDC and DBSA to be involved in building additional generation capacity. Electricity must not be produced for profit. It must be produced for development and the livelihoods of our people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Radebe.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The Inkatha Freedom Party rises to participate in this debate with both caution and principle. The Eskom Debt Relief Amendment Bill seeks to increase the 2025-2026 allocation from 40 billion rand to 80.233 billion rand and introduces a new allocation of 10 billion for the 2028-2029 financial year. This amendment also treats the full 2025-2026 amount as a loan convertible into equity subject to certain conditions. While we understand the gravity of Eskom's debt and its implications for the national economy, we remain concerned about whether this financial support is buying reform or merely postponing collapse. Honorable Speaker, we have long held that bailouts cannot be a substitute for governance. Eskom's operational inefficiencies, governance failures, and historical mismanagement must be addressed decisively. We are further concerned that the bill repeals Section 2, Subsection 3 of the original Debt Relief Act. That clause previously tied disinvestments to strict conditions of reform and accountability. Its removal raises questions about transparency and Eskom's commitment to meeting the necessary performance targets. we must also ask why the cost of Eskom's inefficiencies continues to be shifted to the public. While the government allocates billions in relief, ordinary South Africans continue to suffer under load shedding, rising tariffs, and increasing food and fuel prices. This is not just a fiscal issue, it is a social justice issue. We believe debt relief must be matched by real transformation in Eskom's corporate governance, procurement practices, and labor relations to protect the public interests. We believe that any conversion of debt into equity must come with parliamentary oversight. Eskom must not be a permanent ward of the state, and the Department of Public Enterprises and National Treasury must provide quarterly reports on how the funds are utilized. Honorable Speaker, the South African public is wary. They have endured load shedding, tariffs increases, and broken promises. If we are to pass this bill, let it be with ironclad safeguards and a clear roadmap for Eskom to become financially and operationally independent. In its current form, this bill demands stronger oversight. The IFP is not opposed to supporting Eskom. We support this bill, but we cannot write a blank check. We therefore urge that this House strengthen the amendment through additional conditions and mechanisms for accountability and performance tracking. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Hendricks.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members of the House, and my fellow patriotic South Africans. As a proud partner in the government of national unity, the Patriotic Alliance rise today with clarity and conviction. We support the GNU's mission to restore trust in public institutions, but we will not shy away from holding the institutions to account, especially when the stakes are as high as they are with Eskom. The Eskom Debt Relief Amendment Bill proposed to convert 80 billion into equity for the year 2025-2026 financial year, adding 10 billion for 2028-29, and removes the oversight clause that once ensured compliance. The House must ask, are we building resilience or are we entrenching dysfunction? We offer our support for relief, but only if it is bind to reform. As a partner in the GNU, we make the following commitments. Equity conversion must come with enforceable performance targets. Relief must translate into improved service delivery, not executive access. We call for quarterly reporting to Parliament and community oversight mechanisms. The removal of subsection 3 weakens the accountability framework. We urge its reinstatement with added provision for independent audits and public transparency. If the state becomes Eskom shareholder, then the community must become a stakeholder in Eskom. Let local municipalities and civil society shape Eskom's turnaround strategy. Ownership must be inclusive. The GNU must ensure that relief reaches the forgotten corners of our countries, from El Dorado Park to Eastern Cape. Infrastructure investment must be equitable, not politically convenient. We call for a forensic audit of Eskom procurement, staffing and executive compensation. Let the GNU prove that partnership means accountability, not protectionism. Honorable members, the Patriotic Alliance does not oppose relief. We oppose relief without reform. As partners in the GNU, we are here to build, not to rubber stamp. We are here to serve, not to shield. Let this bill amend to reflect the GNU's promise, a government that listens, acts, and delivers. We vote with conscience, we speak with courage, we govern with integrity. Salute.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Vessels.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Many years of wrong priorities, incompetence, inefficiency, bad governance, looting, and corruption resulted in a failed national electricity supplier, whilst being a state-owned company which sells an essential product. The madness reached an all-time high when this company encouraged its consumers to please use less of its product, a very unique business model. Also, the basic universal rule of economy, that is that a monopoly can never ever make a loss, was proven wrong by this state-owned company. As Eskom made a loss whilst its operational expenditure ever increased, its capital expenditure was inefficient because it was looted, but was decreased, and the loss just became more and more, and the need to increase its debt, its loans, became unsustainable. The FF Plus remains concerned and cautious about the inefficiencies at Eskom and the slow pace at which the unbundling is occurring and the necessary reforms are taking place. It is too slow, progress has been made, and this bill is a step in a direction to also save money in the long term if the conditions are met and if the necessary reforms do take place. But we have to be cautious and vigilant against the continuous corruption and inefficiencies at Eskom. We can't allow, Honourable Speaker, that we ever again have a national electricity supplier that is completely looted and that does not supply in the needs of our people out there. Whilst electricity is also becoming more and more unaffordable, this should be addressed. But then this debt must be gotten under control, and the good governance should be installed at the state-owned company. The high and unsustainable levels of municipal debt to Eskom remains of concern. And if one goes and reflects on the fact that since 2020, this debt more than doubled, we are in a very bad trajectory and this needs to be addressed. But municipalities are financially unsustainable. And where is the solution then? More increasing the prices, withholding equitable share. At the end of the day, it's the people out there that will suffer due to less service delivery by these municipalities, and Eskom will not get out of the financial situation that it is in if this is not addressed on local government level. We need real solutions, but the FF Plus does cautiously support this bill. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Kobe.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, Action SA expresses conditional support for the Eskom Debt Relief Amendment Bill. While the intention behind this bill is understandable to stabilize Eskom's operations and mitigate further electricity crises, our support hinges on the principle that relief must never be unconditional and it must always serve public interest. The bill retains this principle. It ensures that the debt relief remains strictly conditional. Eskom will only benefit from Treasury's assistance if it meets firm, measurable quarterly milestones. These include using funds strictly to settle debt, avoiding new borrowing, capping capital expenditure, and proceeding with asset disposals. We welcome this accountability mechanism and the assurance that loans are only converted to equity after verifiable compliance, not in anticipation to it. Additionally, Treasury's revised structure helps protect fiscal integrity by opting for conditional loans instead of assuming Eskom's debt directly. Government limits the impact on our debt to GDP ratio. But in the short term, this relief is vital. Without it, Eskom's operational viability is threatened, risking worsened load shedding, more diesel burn, and increased reliance on emergency procurement. However, House Chair, our support does not come without caution or clear demands. Firstly, the 50 billion increase needs explanation, with 40 billion in the 2025-2026 allocation rising from 40 billion to 80.2 billion to a further 10 billion in 2028, which is also unexplained. Action SA demands a full public breakdown of this additional 50 billion, including a quarterly disbursement schedule, capital expenditure plans, and an update on the utilities cost savings and reform achievements. Secondly, the risks of cosmetic compliance remain. Without rigorous and independent oversight, Eskom may manipulate or massage performance matrix to appear compliant. Parliament must play a proactive role in interrogating Eskom's progress rather than relying solely on an internal Treasury task team. And lastly, we object to the current lack of parliamentary oversight in the final conversion of debt to equity. These conversions must not happen behind closed doors. Action SA demands that each tranche conversion be tabled in Parliament along with full evidence of compliance. In closing, Action SA will support this bill on the condition that oversight mechanisms are strengthened, transparency is guaranteed, and the South African taxpayer is not left to carry the burden for Eskom's failures unchecked. Thank you, House Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Thring.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The ACGP understands that this amendment bill seeks to amend the Eskom Debt Relief Act number 7 of 2023 so as to provide for the reduction of the amount for the requirements for Eskom for the 2025-26 financial year and to treat the entire amount for that year as a loan convertible to equity upon meeting set conditions. It is an open secret that Eskom has experienced a series of financial and operational challenges, caused to a larger extent by governance failures, poor leadership, corruption, and malfeasance, including poor management and high turnover of board CEOs and executives. All of these factors combined have affected the performance of the power utility. In 2029, the chickens finally came home to roost. And with a debt of 423 billion rand, Eskom could not honor its debt obligations, despite the allocation of some 230 billion rand bailout over a period of 10 years. The rationale for this bailout was that failure to meet its obligations could have had a negative consequence for Eskom and the entire debt portfolio of government. This bill uses accounting gymnastics by raising the initial 40 billion to 80.23 billion for the 25-26 financial year, with an additional 10 billion proposed for 28-29, while the total provision amounts to 20 billion less than the initial 110 billion provisioned for in the 2023 year debt relief bill. Eskom management has boldly expressed confidence in its recovery trajectory. Its financial performance in 2024-25 was boosted by the significant operational turnaround when compared to December 25 Q3 results. But the ACGP is aware that the 16% increase in revenue to 264.6 billion was mainly due to the 12.74% tariff increase. It must be recalled that Eskom failed to present its finances on time to the Auditor General, who lamented that had Eskom implemented its recommendations over the last 5 years, the exorbitant tariff increases would not be necessary. Chairperson, with electricity fast becoming unaffordable, the ACGP called for Eskom to supply quarterly reports in compliance with the Auditor General's recommendations. We understand that there's a need for urgent reform of municipal debt recovery mechanisms, and we call for a moratorium on further bailouts until measurable operations improvements are achieved. The ACDP rejected the Eskom bailout.
Thank you, Honourable Three. Your
2023.
time has expired.
Today, we can do no other. I thank you.
Let me first just determine, is there a speaker from the UDM?
Yes, there is, Deputy Speaker.
Please proceed, Honourable Kwankwa.
Thank you. We are where we are today because of the too big to fail attitude of Eskom, because of the monopoly it had, especially on the energy generation sector in the South African economy. Yes, we're encouraged by the entrance of new private role players in the energy sector. However, in doing so, we have to ensure that we safeguard the energy independence of South Africa, as this is central to the sovereignty of our country. The United Democratic Movement views this as a vital opportunity to introduce key reforms to drive economic growth, to create jobs and foster greater inclusivity. However, this cannot be achieved by repeating the failed policies of the past, including some of the mechanisms we've put in place to try and hold Eskom to account. There needs to be an introduction of new structural reforms across the board when it comes to SOEs to address underperformance, but to also address critical governance and corruption challenges which still exist to this day, even at Eskom, despite the improved financial performance. We agree with the proposal that there must be quarterly reporting of the progress achieved after the bailout has been given to Eskom, because essentially this is what it is, as a way of strengthening oversight mechanisms and ensuring that there's proper accountability for the resources given to Eskom. We are however concerned that since President Ramaphosa announced the unbundling of Eskom into 3 separate entities in 2019, the process is still not concluded, and there are no certain timeframes regarding the completion of the process, leaving a gap on the execution of this amendment bill. This poses a new challenge on how Eskom will structure the government equity injection, the loan to Eskom among the 3 separate entities once the unbundling process is concluded, and how these entities will be able to accurately reflect this on the balance sheet. Another challenge, Deputy Speaker, is one of the municipal debt crisis, where there seems to be a one-size-fits-all. It concerns us a great deal that 87% of municipalities approved for debt relief have still failed to comply with conditions, with the top 10 defaulters owing more than 50 billion rands to Eskom. This is not just a question of ill discipline where municipalities in our view do not want to pay. We can deal with that obviously at a policy level. However, there are many municipalities out there which have limited revenue raising capacity. And because they don't have money to be able to service the debt, they pass over the cost of their maladministration and corruption over to the poor, making electricity extremely unaffordable for a number of poor people in our country who are unable to use the service at all. We need to make sure that, among many things, that Eskom continues to strengthen anti-corruption measures and clean governance measures internally, and that they are able to be held to account on some of what we may consider, despite the improvements.
Thank you, Honourable Kwankwa. Your time has expired.
Thank you, Ma'am.
The Honourable Ghana.
Fellow South Africans, I rise this afternoon on behalf of my fellow millions of South Africans who are doing everything right, working hard, paying what they can, hoping for a better life, but still find themselves in the dike. I rise for the small business owner that is unable to run a business each time there's a load reduction in a community. This debate on the Eskom Debt Relief Amendment Bill is not just about the billions and budget. It's about a grandmother in Guyana, Chandra Shaolobze, who now chooses between buying electricity or buying bread. It is about a single mother in Mafarana who has to cook over a fire because her power has been cut. It is about every South African who opens their prepaid meter, punches in a voucher, and gets fewer and fewer units with every passing month. We are told that the 20 billion rand will be taken off Eskom's original debt relief plan. On paper, that sounds like progress. But let's be honest with the people. Year after year, Eskom receives bailouts, guarantees, and relief. And what do the people of South Africa get in return? Less electricity and higher prices. Just yesterday, Honorable Deputy Speaker, just yesterday, the people of Tembisa had to shut down their township, not because they want to cause chaos, but because they simply cannot take it anymore. And they are not alone. In my home village of Lefara in Zanin, people still wake up without power and sleep in darkness on some days because of load reduction that just can't go away. Eskom must use the loans and bailouts to deal with the terrible twins of high electricity prices and load reduction. The painful truth is this: Eskom has been given billions to provide reliable and affordable electricity, but South Africans now are paying twice. First, through the taxes to fund Eskom, and again, through the soaring electricity prices that are now becoming unaffordable for working families. Honorable members, this is not sustainable. We must stop punishing the poor for the failures of the powerful. We must start talking seriously about an electricity price relief, not for Eskom, but for the people of South Africa. As Rise Mzansi, we will support what is fair, but we will always fight for the dignity of ordinary South Africans first.
Thank you, Honourable Ghana. Honourable Schlazo Webster.
Madam Deputy Speaker, we're here today debating this debt relief bill on the back of what is a cautious celebration on the assurance from the Minister of Electricity that load shedding has ended. But I want to caution that we must not become complacent in this regard, because while load shedding seems to have ended, there's the reality of load reduction. And for millions of South Africans and poor municipalities, what this means is that the lights are still off. Load reduction is a discriminatory injustice of our electricity system. It's a daily punishment of working class families, and they endure it because substations have collapsed, local grids are failing, and quite frankly, municipalities actually just have no plan. There's no contingencies, there's no warnings, and there are no schedules with load reduction. It's either 1 hour or 6 hours or days without electricity. So for the sake of those South Africans who live under the perils of load reduction, mostly poor communities, the bill does have to go beyond stabilizing Eskom's balance sheet. It's got to confront the lived realities of South Africa's economy, who today are sitting in the dark. And it's not because of just the issue of national demand. It's actually because of the real issue of decay. And so this is where the Distributor Agreements Agency becomes important, Deputy Speaker, because where municipalities default, Eskom must be allowed to deal directly with consumers. Prepaid meters must be rolled out, and the DAA model should bypass local dysfunction in order to give power back to the people in the literal sense and in the figurative sense. South Africa's municipalities now collectively owe Eskom over 109 billion rand, and that figure is growing by 15 billion every year. And so we have to say it plainly that this is Eskom's biggest financial risk. It's no longer the issues of corruption, or at least we hope. It is the issue of the debts that come from municipalities and that non-payment. And so the bill must respond to that real problem, and the real problem on the ground. It must include enforceable conditions for municipalities. It must accelerate the rollout of DAAs. It must earmark a portion of the relief to build local distribution infrastructure, especially in high-risk zones, especially in those vulnerable communities. And it must place Parliament at the center of oversight, not after the fact, in real time. And this is a moment that Eskom can be rebuilt into a reliable, efficient, and publicly accountable utility, because anything less would be a disservice to South Africans. And so we support this bill, but we're saying that it has to empower Eskom to serve the people and for us to not be here with another bailout in the near future. I thank you.
The ATM. Honorable Siate.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, Madume Khafeli, the Eskom Debt Relief Amendment Bill seeks to explore the Eskom debt. It seeks to explore the Eskom Debt Relief Bill as a catalyst for market-based reforms aimed at introducing competition and facilitating entry of independent power producers in the electricity market. Deputy Speaker, honorable members, and my fellow countrymen, the task that confronts us today is to provide an opportunity to reshape our nation's electricity future. As South Africans, we have to think of how we experienced a first-hand significant impact in Eskom as in our daily lives. The entity remains a key strategic national asset, and sustainability and capacitation remains firmly in our hands as it still supplies the base of load of power in the country. The Eskom Debt Relief Bill and its fundamental nature is an enabler in the market-based reforms, and it supplies the infrastructure development that is essential for securing our energy independence and unlocking sustainability economic growth. The bill provides the necessary stability for Eskom to meet its debt obligation, but it also creates the headroom and structural conditions necessary to catalyze competition and integrate the independent power producers into a revitalized electricity market. For far too long, Eskom's unsustainability debt burden, exceeding 423 billions at its peak, has hampered its operations and stifled critical investment, particularly in infrastructure development. It also necessitated interventions such as the 9-point recovery plan to ensure that issues of maintenance do not adversely affect the grid integrity. The Eskom Debt Relief directly addresses the crisis by providing 254 billion in structured support over medium term. This injects certainty into Eskom's ability to service its debts and manage debt servicing costs in the long run. Through stability Eskom's finances, the bill frees up the vital internal cash flows previously consumed by the debt servicing. So these funds can now be redirected to its own operations and operational priorities. This allows Eskom to also focus on the planned maintenance to improve the energy availability factor. Deputy Speaker, if you were to examine the structure of this bill, you would have a sense of appreciation to see how this design is explicitly facilitating the restructuring of Eskom by its energy sustainability and critical bottlenecks where our grid lacks the capacity to connect the significant new generation capacity, primarily from renewable IPPs, required to meet the energy demands. The Independent Transition Projects program is public-private initiative designed to upgrade a country's transmission infrastructure. According to the 2019 Integrated Resource Plan and Eskom's Transmission Development Plan of 2024 to 2033, over 14,000 kilometers of new transmission lines will be needed in the next decade for support of the extra 53 gigawatts of generation capacity. The transmission infrastructure is an essential highway with which 37 plus gigawatts of the generation capacity, predominantly from the IPP program, starting from 2026, cannot reach our homes and businesses. The Eskom debt relief bill, therefore, directly funds this great expansion, transforming Eskom's transmission into the crucial enabler of a diversified, competitive generation, transmission, and distribution market. The condition attached to this bill offer a deliberate recalibration of Eskom's role in our energy future by restricting its capital expenditure to specific generation activities only. This makes financial resources available for procuring energy from different resources such as nuclear, renewables, and gas, providing all well-balanced energy mix. It is noteworthy to add that the bill's conditions, while ensuring fiscal discipline, strategically channel Eskom's focus and resources towards ensuring Eskom's remain competitive, and it's a generation industry. Deputy Speaker, Eskom will, with its resilient and stable balance sheet, can be in a position to prioritize critical investment in modernizing its operation. This includes rolling out smart meters to improve revenue collection and grid management, investing in microgrids to enable local resilient and crucial establishment of functional and independent distribution system operators. Now, the strong DSO is crucial for efficiently integrating distributed energy resources and managing a more complex flow of power. The financial certainty provided by this bill is central to attracting the investment needed for this distribution stabilization, as evident in the public comments made on the bill. Deputy Speaker, as I draw towards my conclusion, the Eskom debt relief bill is necessary. Conditional investment in South Africa's energy future, it's actually valuable, and its actual value lies in the averting a debt default and in creating the financial and structural platform for the market-based reforms we have debated for decades. It offers Eskom confidence to service its debt space, to fund essential transmission upgrades, conditions to support IPPs, and opportunities to remain competitive in the generation space. This forms the foundation of energy security and integration approach to generate distribution and transmission. And all of this objective raised in aimed to be achieved in this bill will not be realized if one of our own, Deputy Speaker, does not see the need to make sure that they do pay back the money that they owe back into this entity. There will not be efficiency, there will not be feasibility, there will not be accountability, and there will definitely be no development if one of our own sees no need and wastes more time in judiciary processes that will drag this bill to be beneficiated by South Africans at large. And with that said, Deputy Speaker, this bill remains central to Eskom's renewed operations. The African National Congress support the Eskom Debt Relief Amendment Bill. Bring back the money. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Al-Jamar. Al-Jamar. Does not seem that the member is online. We will then continue to the UAT. The UAT, not online. And good. Not here. Honourable Bateman.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker, Honourable Members, fellow South Africans. The Eskom Debt Relief Act of 2023 made provision for a bailout of 254 billion rands from the National Revenue Fund to meet Eskom's debt and interest obligations and to stabilise its balance sheet. I'm going to say a few words about the Amendment Act this year and then make some observations about Eskom's finances more generally. The amendment bill that we're looking at now of 2025 has the effect of reducing the final two components of this bailout by 20 billion rands. This represents a saving for the fiscus, which has been agreed with Eskom. The payments which Eskom receives in terms of the Eskom Debt Relief Act are loans which are converted to equity, provided Eskom complies with conditions that have been imposed by National Treasury. These conditions have been designed to ensure that the funds are used by Eskom for their intended purposes, to reduce its debt and stabilize its balance sheet. So, for example, Eskom is not permitted to set up any new borrowing facilities except with the written permission of the Minister of Finance. At this stage, only one condition remains outstanding, and that is the sale of the Eskom Finance Company. The sale has been agreed, and it is on its way, or it's with the Competition Commission for regulatory approval. Once a quarter, representatives of Eskom meet with representatives of the National Treasury and the Department of Electricity and Energy to monitor Eskom's compliance with the conditions. This ongoing monitoring must continue to ensure that funds are used for their intended purpose. In essence, the bill is a very simple amendment, and so this debate provides an opportunity to discuss matters relating to Eskom's finances more broadly. So moving on to Eskom's finances more broadly, the 20 billion rand saving for the fiscus follows what Eskom describes as an operational turnaround, which has taken place in the last year. And it's true that unplanned outages in the past 17 months have been significantly lower. And the effect of this, together with increased private generation, has been greatly reduced load shedding. And it seemed at one point as if load shedding was entirely a thing of the past. According to the Eskom CFO, Caleb Kasim, Eskom is about to post its first profit in 8 years. His one caveat is that this excludes the possible effect of impairments of the value of Eskom's generating assets. And furthermore, Kasim does not expect that there will be a need for further guarantees or subsidies from the state. In previous years, we've only heard negative news from Eskom: chronic mismanagement, operational collapse, revelations of gross corruption, staggering cost overruns on capital projects, endless load shedding. The net result was an eye-watering 500 billion rands of bailouts, which crippled the fiscus. So an operational and a financial turnaround and a 20 billion rands windfall is a welcome relief. However, there are significant challenges, risks, and concerns with Eskom which cannot be glossed over or ignored, and I'd like to outline a few of those. The first is the high cost of electricity. Eskom charges now more than 4 times what it charged 20 years ago, even after adjusting for inflation. And this is placing enormous strain on households. It's also slowing down economic growth and job creation. Plus, Eskom is losing good-paying customers who are opting to generate their own power more cheaply rather than be held hostage to Eskom's endless appetite for price increases. There is a limit to how much Eskom can get away with charging. So to reverse the price increases, we need to open up the energy generation market for competition. And Eskom cannot be permitted to drag its heels on this reform. Its heavy-handed tactics towards independent power producers and electricity traders cannot be tolerated. Also, Eskom cannot be permitted to carry on passing on its problems to consumers in the form of price increases. Enough is enough. Eskom is wasteful and inefficient, and it has to clean up its own house instead of burdening South African households. Eskom, clean up your house. Eskom's financial management is a case in point. Eskom has a history of missing reporting deadlines. Its financial statements for the year ended 31 March 2024 were due for 30 September, but they were only delivered for audit in December. Its 2024 audit report highlights breakdowns in controls of various kinds: controls over financial reporting, controls over prepaid electricity tokens, controls over inventories, over irregular expenditure, over fruitless and wasteful expenditure, and over losses due to criminal conduct, amongst other control concerns. And its debt collection is another area of major concern, and that's compounded by the shocking state of local government finances. Here, Eskom will need the support of the National Treasury to deal with the defaulting municipalities. Distribution agency agreements will need to become mandatory, or an equivalent service provided by third-party providers. Smart meter rollout will need to be accelerated. Bulk supply points may need to be moved to prepaid supply in some cases. Equitable shares may need to be attached. Municipalities may need to be placed under administration. We face the risk that local municipalities will drag Eskom down with them if the problems besetting local government finance are not addressed and addressed with speed. So to wrap things up, the Eskom Debt Relief Amendment Bill of 2025 is a green shoot, indicating that Eskom is on the up, but there are very real risks, concerns and challenges that remain. The 20 billion rand saving is a welcome boost for the fiscus. The DA supports this bill.
The Honourable Molefe.
Thank you, House Chair. Honorable Alexander, you wear your ignorance on your sleeve. On the 11th of July, 2025, Judge Tolmay, reading a judgment from a full bench with all the judges concurring, ruled that I do not owe Eskom 10 million rand. On the matter of the appeal. So don't come and show your ignorance here and say, you beg the money on things that you know nothing about. When I'm the fact of the matter, Chairperson, is that in 2016, Eskom's EBITDA was 32 billion rand. Go and check. 32 billion rand. You can Google it even now. Remaiman, EBITDA is earnings before interest, taxation, dividends, and amortization. Profit. It was 32 billion rand. It was a 37.4% increase from the previous year. And between 2015 and 2018, there was no load shedding at Eskom. Load shedding at Eskom returned under the Reiter and Oberholzer. The Reiter and Oberholzer took us to stage 6 load shedding. Why are you, honorable members, not stating these facts and clinging onto narratives that are wrong? Incidentally, in 2016, Transnet's EBITDA was also 32 billion under Honorable Gama. PRASA in 2014 made 547 million trips. In 2024, PRASA made 40 million trips.
Can you please take your seat? There's a point of order from your acting chief whip, Honourable Reddy.
Honourable House Chair, the rules say you can converse, you can howl, but do it in a manner that does not disrupt the speaker. Now, sometimes the truth hurts. I can understand that.
Honourable Reddy, that is not your point of order. Your point of order is on the noise, the high volume in the House, and I will judge whether it is audible or not.
Thank you very much.
At this point,
it's important
Honourable Molefe,
people must listen.
Honourable Reddy, you are now exceeding the point of order. Honourable Reddy, you are now doing exactly what you accuse the other members of doing. Honourable Molefe, please proceed.
Under Honourable Montana here, PRASA made 41 million trips in 2014. This year, or in 2024, PRASA only made 40 million trips, carried 40 million trips. And so these narratives that we hear about Montana, about Gama, about Molefe are not true. We should call this debt relief bill by its name. This is a debt relief to deal with Oberholzer and the Reuters mess. We must call it by its name. Nibasabane abelungu. Nibasabane abelungu. Oberholzer was rewarded with a 9 billion rand tender only last year, before he even left as the chief operating officer of Transnet. He was rewarded with a 9 billion rand battery tender related to Eskom. There was not even the observation of good governance that he should cool off for 2 years. He did not have to cool off because he's operating from a position of privilege. The tender was out of kilt with good governance. The King Code of Governance recommends cooling off of 2 years. This did not apply to Oberholzer. And yet, you come here and you point fingers, you beg the money, you beg the money. Let's call it by its real name. They said when load shedding started in 2000, when Oberholzer was in and the Raider were running Eskom, that it's because the machines had been run down by Molefe and Gogo. The current CEO, Dan Marugan, is running exactly the same machines and is not load shedding. What he is doing is what we did when we were at Eskom. Connect the dots, as Pravin Gordhan would say. Join the dots. Why did Oberholzer and the Raider run down Eskom? Why are we here talking about debt relief on Oberholzer and the Raiders mess? Nibasabani abelungu.
The Honorable Lekanyane. Order, honourable members. Honourable members, order. Honourable Lekanyane, please proceed.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, good afternoon. Let me take this opportunity and congratulate the chairperson of our standing committee, Honourable Maimane, on his inspirational and magnificent achievement. And I think this will be an inspiration to many South Africans. I see there are many politicians who are becoming doctors. It shows that we have consciously taken a decision that leadership is a choice, and that South Africa has been electing leaders who have not chosen to lead. And now, as leaders who are choosing to lead. Congratulations, Honourable Maimane. Secondly, I want to state it here that when Dr. Ramokgopa was appointed the Minister of Electricity, the appointment itself was laughed at and was even dismissed as ridiculous and in certain corners as ludicrous. But we can see now that the appointment was carefully thought, well calculated, and South Africa is reaping rewards from that appointment. And we must also thank Dr. Ramokgopa for bringing his abilities and skills to the department. Honorable members, in the 31 years that the African National Congress has been leading this country, we appointed South Africans from all walks of life as the leadership of this government to play a role in the development and reconstruction of their own countries, of their own country. And these are South Africans who, not all of them were members of the African National Congress, but some belong to other parties and some did not belong to any party. They were just ordinary South Africans who wanted to serve their country. There are those who serve this country very diligently. And there are those who, in line of service, there are wrongs and there are mistakes that happen. But what remains is that that government was led by the African National Congress. The ANC has said it many times that we take credit for the successes that we have achieved in this country. And we also take responsibility for the wrong appointments that have happened that put us to where we were in the last 3 or in the last 5 years. We take responsibility for that. Whoever was in a position of leadership in a state department, in a state-owned enterprise, all of them were appointed by the African National Congress. And we take responsibility for those appointments. Where wrongs have happened, we do not want to conduct ourselves like the Bourbon King Louis XVI. When he left office, chief whip, he says, "After me, I see disaster." We don't want to speak like Jan Smuts or other leaders who were there. Jan Smuts in 1903, when he was interviewed about the future of Africans in this country, he responded by saying he can only imagine shadows and darkness. We can't give that kind of a response, especially that we are going to school like Dr. Maimane, Dr. Masondo, Dr. Maswanganyi, Dr. Gigaba. We can't give such responses. We have chosen to lead. We must take responsibility. And one of the things that show that we have chosen to lead is this Eskom Relief Amendment Bill. We can't see shadows and darkness. And we can't even predict disaster to follow us. When we leave offices, we must not leave vacancies. We must leave legacies. Honorable members, the ANC-led government in the 6th Parliament introduced the Energy Action Plan to reduce load shedding, and Eskom commenced with maintenance plans, which included fixing the defects that happened in Medupi and Kusile power stations. And as I speak here, for sure all of you understand that Medupi and Kusile are now operational, optimally operational. And we take responsibility for the wrong designs that happened at Medupi, where we spent a lot of time with that project not being completed with cost overruns and the corruption that went with it. We take responsibility for that. Whoever was responsible there was appointed by the African National Congress. The main purpose of the debt relief amendment bill is the restructuring of the remaining financial support to better align with Eskom's state majority profile. The previously planned 70 billion advance has been revised to two advances, 40 billion rand in 2025-26 to redeem debt maturing in April 2026 and 10 billion rand in 2028-29 for debt maturing in May 2028. This adjustment has reduced the total debt relief package from 254 billion to 230 billion. As of July, Eskom has received 140 billion in shareholder loans under the Eskom Debt Relief Act 2023 to support its financial recovery and operational stability. The Minister of Finance has approved the conversion of the 140 billion into equity based on Eskom's demonstrated compliance with strategic conditions attached to the debt relief interest payments. To date, amount to 1.2 billion. Honorable members, the debt relief has delivered significant benefits in supporting Eskom's operational recovery and addressing the persistent load shedding challenges. The key outcomes of this have been easing of liquidity pressures, enabling Eskom to redirect internal cash flows to critical operational and infrastructure needs, contributing to improved plant performance and reduced load shedding. Number two, it targeted funding to support generation plant recovery and maintenance, improving operational reliability and energy availability. And lastly, the balance sheet strengthening, enhancing Eskom's credit profile and financial resilience, reducing the reliance on state support and enabling investment in the new generation capacity under more favorable conditions. To safeguard against future unsustainable debt, strict conditions remain in place, including borrowing restrictions, which cannot happen without National Treasury approval. Enhanced financial controls, progress on unbundling and acceleration of generation recovery. The debt relief framework thus links financial support to tangible governance and structural reforms. This reflects the robust oversight and controls implemented by government to monitor the effective utilization of the debt relief and to enable Eskom's continued compliance. Honorable Deputy Speaker, Eskom Debt Relief Bill enabled the entity to finance the action plans and maintenance plan for its own revenue to end load shedding. This means that this bill positively contributed to restoring generation capacity through dealing with debt liability, which enabled increased revenue to be utilized for maintenance. This ensured it ensured an improvement in the energy availability factor from 48% to 68%, and Eskom is intending further improvements of the energy available factor to 70%. This signaled a reduction in unplanned shutdowns and improved plant performance with an increase in generation capacity. The people and the economy are starting to feel the positive contribution which this bill has made as load shedding reached a peak in 2023 of some 333 days. Since the introduction of this bill, there has been more than 300 days without load shedding, coupled with a reduction in the usage of diesel at peaking plants. This is evidence of a plan coupled with the correct legislation and regulation which is working. Chairperson of the House, our aim is not merely to end load shedding, but to ensure that generation capacity is increased to match the increase in demand and ensure inclusive economic growth and job creation. Our aim in reducing the debt liability through this bill is to ensure the increase in generation capacity to enable the implementation of the medium-term development plan. Our aim through this bill is also to ensure that the Integrated National Electrification Plan, which has been a success story since 1994, not only delivers connections to historically disadvantaged communities, but ensures that it is accompanied by electricity supply at the cheapest possible cost. The ANC support this bill, and we call on all South Africans to join us in our resilient march to make the country great.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Honourable Deputy Minister of Finance, Dr. Masondo, will close the debate.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, honourable members, Honourable Molefe, citing one cause of a phenomenon, a problem, in this case, the public, that the Eskom debt, in the midst of many causes, it does not help in telling the entire truth. Because part of the problem of this, the debt at Eskom, is due to, which you know better than I do, the cost overruns in Medupi and Kusile, as well as the shift from the cost-plus power stations, which generated a lot of cost insofar as generating energy is concerned. And periodization of history is not neutral. You can cite problems that starts in 1994 and apportion everything on the ANC. And as Honorable Khanyan has said, the ANC has owned up the good and the bad. You can focus on the pre-1994 problems to hide the current challenges and problems that we are facing. Honorable members, what this debate shows is that had we not provided the debt relief 2 years ago to Eskom, the rolling blackout would have possibly continued. Our economy would have significantly deteriorated, not only because of the power cuts, but due also to the rising sovereign risk premium, as other speakers have said. And because of this debt relief and other interventions, today load shedding is lower than it has been in the recent past. The load shedding is an exception and no longer the rule. And we agree, Honorable Hlazo Webster, that we have not fully solved our challenges, but we've made significant progress. The debt relief program has provided Eskom with an enabling balance sheet to spend more money in improving Eskom's capacity to supply electricity. This is not just about keeping lights on. This is about protecting jobs and recovering our economy. The bill before us also shows that when we give tough love to our SOEs, as our finance minister will say, sticking to plans rather opting for quick fixes, we realize better results. Honorable members, unlike in the past, where we came before you to ask this House to approve more funds to bail out Eskom, today we are requesting the House to reduce Eskom's burden on the fiscus. We are asking the House to reduce the debt relief program from 254 billion to 230 billion over 5 years, because, as many speakers have said, Eskom has improved its operational performance enabled by the debt relief. The original debt relief plan called for 70 billion debt takeover in 2025-2026. The debt relief is now reduced to 50 billion in 2025-2026 and 2028-2029, aligned with actual debt maturity dates. This saves taxpayers around 20 billion while providing exactly what Eskom needs. Honorable members, it is when SOEs generate revenue and continue to provide goods and services without continuous bailouts from the government. Eskom is a case in point. Today, Eskom is profitable. It is when tough love is provided that SOEs, it is when we appoint competent boards and executive, and it is when strict conditions that we provide to our SOEs that SOEs can be turned around. Eskom did not receive the 4 billion when it did not meet one of its debt relief conditions. We will also look at additional conditions that members have suggested, but let's accept that Eskom's operational performance has improved. Eskom's finances have stabilized. Now businesses and citizens have regained confidence in Eskom. We agree with Honorable Maimane and many other honorable members that the municipal debt to Eskom must be addressed and must be addressed urgently. Municipalities that are refusing to pay their bills are undermining our efforts to stabilize SOEs such as Eskom. We are developing stringent measures to stop this wrong practice. The 3 pillars we established for monitoring Eskom, i.e. capital expenditure, revenue generation, and debt management, all show positive results. Honorable members, the Eskom's improved financial and operational performance through various interventions shows that effective government works. When energy crisis threatened our country, through decisive action, we have turned the crisis into recovery. I commend that the House accept this bill. Thank you very much.
Honourable members, that concludes the debate. Are there any objections to the Eskom Debt Relief Amendment Bill being read a first time? Honourable Reddy.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. The controversies where party will vote against this bill and we would call for division. Thank you.
A division having been called, the bells will be rung for 5 minutes. Honourable members, please take your seats. Honourable members, the Speaker has determined that, in accordance with the rules, a manual voting procedure will be used for this division. Firstly, in order to establish a quorum, I would request the table to confirm that we have the requisite number of members physically present in the chamber and on the platform to make this decision. Party whips will then be given an opportunity to confirm the number of their members present and indicate if they vote for or against the question. A member who wishes to abstain or vote against the party vote may do so by informing the chair. MK.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker, and greetings to you and members. The controversies where party will be voting against the Eskom Debt Relief Amendment Bill, with 17 honorable, disciplined, revolutionary MK members in the House and 35 online, with a total of 52 MK members. I thank you.
IFP. No, EFF, my apologies.
Deputy Speaker, we are going to fall. In the House, Speaker, Deputy Speaker, we are 9 online, we are 16 in total, 25 who are voting against.
Thank you. IFP.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. On the virtual platform, we are 9. In the House, we are 3, and we vote in favor. Thank you.
PA.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Patriotic Alliance, 3 members voting in favor.
FF Plus.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. We are 3 members in the House, 3 members on the online platform voting in support.
Thank you. Action SA.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Action SA, we've got 3 online, 2 in the House, therefore 5, and we vote in support. Thank you.
ACDP.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. 1 in the House, 1 online in support. Thank you.
UDM.
2 online voting in support. Thank you.
RISE.
RISE 1 in the House, we support.
BOSA.
BOSA with 2 in the House, we support.
ATM. Not present. Al Jamar. Not present. NCC.
1 in the House, voting against. Thank you, Speaker.
PAC.
1 online, Deputy Speaker, in support.
Hello.
UAT.
UAT, 1 online, voting against.
Good. Good. Not present. Is there any member who wishes to abstain or vote differently to their party? It does not seem so. Honourable members, thank you. The voting session is now closed. Honourable members, the results of the division is as follows. The ayes, 247. The noes, 79, and no abstentions. The question is accordingly agreed to, and the Secretary will read the bill a first time.
Eskom Debt Relief Amendment Bill.
Honourable members, the Secretary will read the next order.
Second reading, Eskom Debt Relief Amendment Bill.
As there is no list of speakers, are there any objections to the bill being read a second time? Honourable Reddy.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. The controversies will object to this bill. Thank you.
The objection of the MKP is noted. Any further objections?
And on the question of division, we won't call for one.
Thank you so much, Honourable Reddy. Honourable Paulson.
Not the objection of the EFF, Speaker, Deputy Speaker.
The objection of the EFF is noted. Any other objections?
Yes, please. Note the objection of UAT.
UAT and the NCC. Noted. And with those objections agreed to, the Secretary will read the bill a second time.
Eskom Debt Relief Amendment Bill.
The bill will be sent to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence. The Secretary will read the 10th order.
Consideration of report of Standing Committee on Finance on Revenue Laws Amendment Bill.
I now recognize the Honourable the Chief Whip.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker, and I move that the report to be adopted.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? Honourable Reddy.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. The Umkhonto we Sizwe Party will reject this bill, the Revenue Laws Amendment Bill. Thank you.
The objection of the MKP is noted. Honourable Mkalipi.
Deputy Speaker, please note the objection of the EFF.
The objection of the EFF is noted. Any other objections?
Thank you, Speaker. Note the objection of UAT.
The objection of the UAT is noted. Any other objections? And with those objections, it is agreed to. The Secretary will read the 11th order.
First reading debate, Revenue Laws Amendment Bill.
The first speaker is the Honourable Dr. Maswanganyi.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker, Ministers, Honourable Members. I hereby present the report of the Committee on the Revenue Laws Amendment Bill. On 1st September 2024, the government introduced reforms to the retirement savings regime by establishing what we call the two-pots retirement system. Under this system, retirement savings are categorized in three components: the vested component, savings component, and retirement component. This regime came into effect through a progressive piece of legislation enacted by the ANC government during the 6th Parliament and administration. Nevertheless, concerns were raised regarding the implementation of this legislation. Consequently, the Minister of Finance introduced the Revenue Laws Amendment Bill to address the concerns raised by workers, pension fund administrators, SARS, and the National Treasury. The 2025 Revenue Laws Amendment Bill introduces the following key changes. 1, clarification on the timing of the seeding amount calculation, providing certainty to retirement fund members and administrators. 2, optionality for retirement funds to determine the calculation date for seeding amount, either 31st August 2024 or the last day of the election month, as per fund rules and communication to members for those eligible to opt into the two-pot system. 3, clarification of the definition of members' interest in each of the three components, specifying that the components must be reduced proportionally by applicable Section 37D deductions. 4th, alignment of the definition of retirement annuity fund to ensure consistency with the intended objectives of the reform. And lastly, 5th, alignment of the definition of retirement annuity fund to ensure consistency with the intended objectives of the reform. Deputy Speaker, let us commend the significant progress made by the ANC government in implementing the two-pot pension reforms since September 2024. For the first time, workers have the opportunity to access a portion of their savings without needing to resign from their jobs or withdraw their entire funds. While workers
can obtain relief once per tax year. This approach is expected to enhance long-term savings rates. We are encouraged by the positive response from workers to these progressive reforms, with millions submitting applications for relief from their pension and provident funds. The two-part pension reforms and the 10% increase up to 30,000 rand have provided relief to millions of workers, offering access to a third of their future savings when needed. Pension fund administrators have reported unprecedented numbers of calls and applications from workers. We are pleased that over 57 billion rand has been paid to more than 3.5 million workers. These pension fund reforms are among the most transformative since the democratic breakthrough in 1994. These hard-won reforms mark the first step in a journey to place workers' needs at the heart of the transformation agenda and to ensure pension and provident funds support workers throughout their careers into retirement. As with transformational changes aimed at improving the lives of millions, there will be challenges and no shortage of confusion from right-wingers. This will dissipate as reforms reach millions of struggling and indebted workers. It is our responsibility as representative of the people to ensure that workers' needs are addressed. While we acknowledge and celebrate these achievements, we are infuriated by the revelation that over 7,700 employers have failed to pay their workers' pension contributions during this relief process. The most significant violations have occurred in the municipal, security, and cleaning sectors. This behavior constitutes fraud and theft, and it must be addressed with the agency by law enforcement. The FSCA must take firm and decisive action against these delinquent employers. Deputy Speaker, the committee reaffirms the importance of inclusive public participation and commends stakeholders, including individual citizens, for engaging in the legislative process. However, the committee notes that submissions not referencing specific clauses are difficult to incorporate into technical deliberations. It therefore recommends that Parliament improve its public participation mechanisms, such as using plain language summaries of bills, submissions templates, and orientation sessions to help stakeholders prepare clause-linked inputs. Public hearings were held on the 1st of July 2025 with submissions received from various stakeholders. On 8 July 2025, National Treasury and SARS presented the response document to the committee, which outlined all public comments and deliberations by the committee on the bill. Deputy Speaker, the public submissions on the Revenue Laws Amendment Bill reflect a wide array of technical and policy-related concerns raised by stakeholders. The committee notes that stakeholders expressed broad support for the two-pot retirement system implemented on the 1st of September 2024, citing its potential to improve retirement outcomes and liquidity access for members. However, stakeholders emphasize that the effectiveness of the system depends on resolving certain technical issues. The committee notes stakeholder concern regarding the restriction in paragraph 6B of the second schedule of this bill, which limits fund members to a 1:1 transfer on withdrawal. This change removes the pre-existing option to proportionally split transfers across multiple funds, thereby potentially affecting member flexibility and annuitization options. National Treasury indicated that this provision will be reviewed in the next legislative cycle and justified the restriction as a safeguard against premature commutation. The committee considers the matter to be substantive and recommends that it be reviewed with urgency in consultation with stakeholders. Deputy Speaker, concerns were raised regarding the inconsistency of the use of the terms nominee, dependent, and beneficiary across the Income Tax Act and the Pension Funds Act. While National Treasury declined to replace nominee and dependent with beneficiary, the committee supports a comprehensive review in subsequent legislation to ensure legal coherence and administrative certainty across statutory regimes governing retirement funds. Deputy Speaker, the committee notes the inconsistencies in the effective dates between the 2024 Taxation Laws Amendment Act and the 2024 Revenue Laws Amendment Act. Although SARS began implementation from 1st September 2024, National Treasury confirmed that 1st March 2025 remains the applicable date. The committee accepted this clarification but recommends that Treasury and SARS improve inter-bill coordination to avoid confusion in future legislative process. Deputy Speaker, the committee processed the bill clause by clause, considered and adopted this progressive bill. In conclusion, Deputy Speaker, let me indicate that by having access to a portion of their retirement savings, workers can better navigate financial challenges and reduce their reliance on debt or other forms of financial assistance. I therefore move that the National Assembly adopt the committee report. Now, Keynes.
Yeah. Thank you. The next speaker is the Honorable Van Rooyen.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. The bill before this House deals with changes in some of the definitions within the 1962 apartheid-era Drafted Income Tax Act, an introduction of some minor technical changes within the so-called Freedom-era tax law regime. Since all these muted amendments are more technical in nature, allow me, House Chairperson, to delve more into the lessons learned during the 2025 budget process as the so-called GNU administration tried to give effect to the provisions of these pieces of legislation. It is in this year's budget process wherein the question on the balancing of powers of lawmaking by Parliament as the legislature and delegated lawmaking powers to the executive was brought back to life. When VAT increase was going to be effected on a certain date, just because of the announcement made in the budget speech by a heartless and uncaring minister, we were reminded of the provision of this apartheid-era drafted legislation. Honorable Chairperson, Section 5, subsection 2A and B of the Income Tax Act allows the Minister of Finance to alter the income rate by virtue of the date determined by the minister. In terms of this act, this power to alter or amend tax rates by virtue of an announcement will remain in force for a period of 12 months from date announced, subject to Parliament passing legislation giving effect to that announcement. In simple terms, Honorable Speaker, it means the tax rate, whether accepted or rejected by Parliament, as we have seen in this financial year budget process, will be in force for 12 months from the minister's announced date. As we all know, in this year's budget process, trillions were lost by businesses as a result of this weird provision. Government also lost billions as a result of this madness. Over the years, this Parliament have delegated more powers to the executive. Hence, this madness is also prevalent on how Finance Minister sources loans for our beloved country. Section 66 and 77 of the PFMA allows the Minister of Finance to source loans without Parliament scrutiny. By this legislative provision, Parliament allows our nation and future generations to be indebted without extensive interrogation of the details of the debt the country continues to incur as a result of these mighty loans. Speaker or Honorable Chairperson, as the seventh Parliament, we can't allow the forced marriage of the so-called GNU executive nor its spineless minister to be taking such serious decision for our country without our robust oversight. As MK Party, we are working on changing these legislative provisions. The so-called GNU hardly agrees on anything. If it was in of their masters, the real forced marriage architectures, the participants could have long left their abusive relationship. As much as South Africa wide control media portrays the Minister of Finance as the most incorruptible, South Africans are not fools. They know who was at the forefront of the failed VAT increase. They know who unleashed a regressive fuel levy on them. They know what causes the increase in food, transport, and production costs. As much as councillors in a rural municipality don't know what caused the increase in electricity rates, our people in Tembisa know that fiscal consolidation and austerity measures caused their sufferings. Hence, they've lost hope and they are taking it to the street. The working class agrees on its assertion that the Minister of Finance should have been censured on his failure to deliver a pro-poor budget. They further told us that we shouldn't trust him because he failed to give them appropriate answers on the mismanagement of their pension funds while serving at South African Clothing and Textile Workers Union, commonly known as SATAU. MK Party, Honorable Speaker, cannot support these amendments because it's our conclusion and assertion that these amendments are not necessarily meant to deal with issues of enhancing revenue tax laws that are meant to empower our system of government. But these amendments are meant to entrench laws that perpetuate unaccountability and, of course, promote debt entrapment of our nation. So as MK Party, we are not in a position to support these amendments.
Thank you. Honorable Alexander.
Thank you, House Chair, honourable members. Today we examine a critical piece of legislation and the technical complexities before us within the Revenue Law Amendments Bill. The bill is about fixing technical problems which our new retirement system, which came into effect in September last year. Last year we introduced the two-part retirement system, the system that splits people's retirement money into three parts: money you have saved, money you can access before retirement, and money for your retirement. This builds a South Africa where you control your financial destiny, accessing help when you need it, and securing a comfortable future for your retirement years. Honourable House Chair, when we started the new two-part system, we wanted to give South Africa flexibility, particularly around financial emergencies. This was a good idea. However, some challenges have presented themselves and need clarification. Fund administrators and the ordinary South Africans need clarity on when exactly to calculate the starting amounts, which dates to use for different calculations, and which deductions should work across, and how the deductions should work across the three parts. This bill looks at providing clarity to these so that people can understand exactly what to do. The bill makes three fundamental improvements. Firstly, it makes clear when retirement funds can calculate the starting amount for each person's account. Secondly, it gives the retirement fund a choice to whether they can use either the 31st of August 2024 or the last day of their chosen month for calculation. And lastly, it explains exactly how monies will be deducted for things like maintenance payments, which needs to come off proportionately across all three portions of the retirement savings. Honourable House Chair, the Finance Committee heard from big retirement funds, people and experts that work with pensions every day, and ordinary people like you and I. And what did they have to tell us? Well, they worried about the new transfer rules. When you change jobs, you used to be able to split your pension monies into different funds. You may have wanted some here and some there, but now the new rules, you can only move everything into one fund. People don't like this because we're taking away their choices. There's also a confusion over the use of words. One law calls a family member a nominee, another law calls them a dependent, and a third law calls them a beneficiary. We're talking about the same person. No wonder there's confusion. Fund managers don't know which words to use, and ordinary people don't understand what to do. You know that sometimes how we get asked on different forms to fill in our address. They're all slightly differently worded, but different. Same problem here. Different laws, but they need to match up properly so there is no confusion. These technical issues need to be fixed. The bottom line is that people want the system to work, but right now we have bumps in the road. Honourable House Chair, the concerns need to be addressed and National Treasury urgently needs to review the transfer restrictions. South Africa should not lose flexibility in managing their retirement savings. The terminology issue needs to be fixed in the next round of tax law changes, which is important for legal clarity. House Chair, despite these concerns, we will still support this bill because this bill affects millions of South Africans and their families. It helps fix the problem with the system that is already making a real difference in people's lives. The two-pot retirement system represents our commitment to helping South Africans balance their immediate needs with long-term security. These technical improvements will make the system work better for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honourable Maotwe.
Thank you very much, House Chair. House Chair, let me take this opportunity to greet the President, the Commander-in-Chief, Honourable Julius Malema, who appeared yesterday in the East London High Court on frivolous charges that even the East London High Court on frivolous charges that even the prosecutor to prove there is no evidence linked to our president. But because this is political persecution, we're not surprised that 5 years later, this case continues, a waste of taxpayers' money for nothing but a political witch hunt. We say to the President and Commander-in-Chief, who will be addressing the masses on Saturday, the 26th of July, as the EFF celebrates the 12th anniversary, we say, Comrade President, stand firm under the two-pot system, forcing people to steal from their future. We, as the EFF, rejected the two-pot system from the onset because we want that it is not a solution. You cannot fail to grow the economy, collapse state institutions, and subject the poor and working class to worsening economic conditions. The cost of bread has gone up, the price of petrol has gone up, electricity, transport, education, airtime, data, all have gone up. Yet instead of growing the economy and creating jobs for our people, the National Treasury and the ANC government are failing to address the real issues confronting our people. There are people who contributed to the Transkei Government Services Pension Fund, Buputatswana Pension Fund, Venda Pension Fund, and Siskai Pension Fund, who have never received a cent, have been in this struggle for over 30 years, fighting to get what is rightfully theirs. Many elderly citizens have traveled long distances to petition this very parliament for assistance. Some of them have slept outside the gates of parliament, braving cold weather, hoping to be heard. Many have died waiting for their money Many are being swindled in rural villages by unscrupulous individuals promising to help them access their pensions. Even after the National Treasury made promises and referred to non-existent outstanding reports, we have seen nothing happening for our people. It appears as if the National Treasury is simply waiting for all the beneficiaries to die. This deliberate neglect extends to the financial sector, particularly insurance companies that took money from the workers of Botswana, Venda, Siskai, and Transkei, the so-called TBVC states, and have never been held accountable. These are companies such as Old Mutual, Sanlam, and Liberty Life, who benefited from pension deductions during the apartheid Bantustan era. Yet today, there is no comprehensive record of restitution or repayment. These financial institutions pocketed the savings of black workers, of teachers, nurses, and police officers under oppressive regimes and then abandoned them during the transition. Despite the countless submissions made to Parliament and the Presidency, there has been no thorough investigation into what happened to these funds. The silence of the National Treasury on this matter is not ignorance, it is complicit. Instead of demanding the return of these funds or launching a forensic audit of these insurance companies, the National Treasury protects them as if it were their spokespersons. The Financial Sector Conduct Authority, which is supposed to regulate the insurance and pension sector, has done nothing meaningful to bring justice to our people. These companies are treated as untouchable pillars of the financial elite, when in fact they are beneficiaries of colonial and apartheid theft. If we are serious about justice, we must compel these companies to open their books and account for what happened to the pensions of TBVC workers. The time for hiding behind legal technicalities and outdated legislation is over. Yet we are here, obsessed with perfecting a system that should not even exist in the first place. As if things are not bad enough, it is the National Treasury, the Minister of Finance, and the FSCA that have turned a blind eye to our employees who deduct pension contributions from workers but fail to pay them over to pension administrators. This is absolutely shocking. It amounts to defrauding workers of their money and their future. Instead of fixing this problem, we're wasting time on non-issues. There are more than 7,000 employers who commit this fraud monthly. Some, including municipalities, have defrauded for more than a year. It is the security guards, the cleaners and gardeners who wake up, try to withdraw money from their two-pot savings and are told they cannot because their employers have not paid their contributions. We do not need modest amendments to legislation. We need to send a clear message to those people who exploit the vulnerable. We propose the following urgent interventions as the EFF. Any employer who fails to pay over-deducted pension contributions should be barred from doing business with the state. They must not be awarded any tenders. Tender requirements demand compliance with all statutory obligations. In the case of municipalities, municipal managers and CFOs must not receive their salaries if their outstanding pension contributions are not paid. There must be criminal prosecution of employers who steal pension workers' money. There must be transparency around all pension deductions. It must not be based on voluntary disclosure. It must be made the law. There are things the National Treasury should be obsessed with instead of chasing tax revenue at the cost of the workers. This is the very same department that has stolen the future of our children by accumulating unsustainable debt.
Thank you, Honorable Maotwe.
430 billion rand.
Your time is now expired. The next speaker is the Honorable Adebe.
Thank you, House Chairperson. The Inkatha Freedom Party stands in support of the Revenue Laws Amendment Bill, but we do so with critical engagement. This bill may appear technical at face value, but in reality, it speaks to the heart of a new retirement regime under which millions of South Africans are now living. The implementation of the two-pot system on the 1st of September 2024 was historic, but it has not been smooth, nor has it fully addressed the deep financial insecurity facing working people. The bill introduces crucial amendments to the Income Tax Act of 1962 and correct key provisions in the Revenue Laws Amendment Act of 2024. These corrections were overdue. We must ask, why are we fixing these issues after implementation rather than before? Had the necessary public consultation and the readiness checks been thoroughly conducted before the two-pot system was launched, Parliament might not be sitting here in 2025 rushing through retroactive legal cleanup. House Chairperson, while the law is changing, for many workers, very little has improved. Workers over the age 55 on 1 March 2021, particularly those in preservation funds, are still unclear about their rights, despite the fact that their ability to elect to join the savings component is time limited. The 30,000 rand cap on initial transfers into the savings pot is arbitrary and restrictive. Why should a worker who has served diligently be denied more flexible access, particularly in today's difficult economy? Even with these amendments, fund administrators remain overwhelmed and delays in processing withdrawals are widespread. The burden is falling on workers, not the system. Where is Treasury's accountability in ensuring this reform is not just passed, but actually delivered? The bill corrects the law, but it does not correct the inequality in South Africa's retirement system. Millions of South Africans in the informal sector still have no pension coverage at all. Women, domestic workers, and low-income earners still face retirement poverty with or without a two-point structure, and many of those who now qualify for early withdrawals are using them for survival, not savings. These are systemic problems that require policy coverage, not just statutory cleanups. The IFP supports this bill because we must make the system work, but we reject the notion that the post-implementation fixes can substitute for real engagement with the public. We call on the Minister of Finance and National Treasury to provide annual reports to Parliament on the operation and equity outcomes of the two-pot system, review the arbitrary caps and exclusions affecting workers' choices, and commit to universalizing pension coverage in South Africa so that South African workers, formal or informal, is not left behind. The bill is necessary, but is not enough. The IFP supports the Revenue Law Amendment Bill as a corrective measure, but we remain vigilant. Retirement reform must serve the people, not the system. The long-term dignity of our workers demands more than technical precision. It demands fairness, transparency, and compassion. I thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honourable Peterson.
Thank you, House Chairperson, honourable members, members of the public. As the Patriotic Alliance, we commend the committee's inclusive public participation process, including the hearings held on the 1st of July 2025. The committee's recommendations reflect a commitment to transparency and responsiveness. However, Chairperson, the Patriotic Alliance notes several unresolved concerns. The bill currently limits withdrawal transfers to a single fund, removing flexibility for members to split transfers across multiple funds. Treasury has committed to reviewing this in the next legislative cycle. Inconsistent use of terms like nominee, dependent, and beneficiary across the Income Tax Act and Pension Fund Act requires harmonization. The committee recommends a comprehensive review in future legislation. Honourable members, the Patriotic Alliance supports the committee's recommendation that these technical refinements be prioritized in the next legislative cycle, but we also call for a deeper interrogation of how these reforms affect working class South Africans, especially those in informal employment and historical excluded communities. The PA supports. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Beasley.
Chair, just under a year ago, legislation was passed to reform South Africa's retirement system through the introduction of the two-pot system. Today, we consider amendments to that framework which seek to improve its implementation and effectiveness.
The rationale behind the two-pot system remains sound. It aims to strike a balance between long-term financial preservation and the urgent need for liquidity in the present. But the way it's being used tells a much deeper story about the state of our economy. Recent data confirms that over the past year, South Africans have already withdrawn more than 57 billion from their retirement savings under the system. The most cited reason for the withdrawals are deeply troubling. 48% of people access their savings to cover day-to-day living expenses, while 46% use the money to pay off debt. This is not simply a story of financial planning. It is a glaring red flag that the cost of living is crushing South African households, and it speaks directly to the failure of this government of national unity to give direction to a stagnating economy. Speaker, there's a common myth that middle-class South Africans are coping, but the evidence shows the opposite. Many of the 7.5 million registered taxpayers who keep our revenue system afloat are under immense pressure. These are the teachers, nurses, civil servants, and small business owners. They are not the wealthy elite, and yet they carry a disproportionate share of the tax burden. Many are repaying mortgages, car loans, and small business debt at the same time, and interest rates remain painfully high. Recent figures show that over 70% of their income is going just to service this debt. We are seeing a surge in defaults on home and car loans, with even middle and upper middle income earners turning to debt review in record numbers. This is not sustainable. It's a symptom of an economy in distress. At the same time, food inflation continues to hammer the poorest and most vulnerable. Bread, maize meal, and meat prices have soared. Households in the lowest income brackets, who spend up to 50% of their income on food, are bearing the brunt. They cannot borrow their way out of this crisis. They are simply going hungry. So yes, it is deeply concerning that millions of South Africans are now forced to sacrifice their future security and retirement just to survive today. The nearly 2 million South Africans who have drawn down their retirement savings early deserve better. They deserve an economy where they can provide for their families and retire with dignity, not one where their only lifeline is the money meant to support them in old age. Speaker, in conclusion, Action SA supported the original two-pot legislation because we recognize the real struggles South Africans face, and we will support the bill before us today, which seeks to improve the workability of that system. But we do so while urging the House to face the uncomfortable truth that too many South Africans are living on a knife edge, and no retirement reform alone can fix that. We need urgent and bold action to get this economy going, reduce the cost of living, and restore financial hope to South Africa's poor, middle, and working class. I thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honourable Swart.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, the primary objective of the two-pot system is to provide flexibility for fund members to access their retirement savings during emergencies without necessitating resignation, as took place in the past. Now, the ACDP supported this pension reform as we believe it strikes the right balance between long-term security and immediate needs, recognizing life's unpredictability. And it permits fund members to access a portion of their savings during crises. And this change ensures the retirement system remains responsive to diverse financial needs, supporting both long-term financial security and immediate assistance during emergencies. However, we share concerns about the number of people that have been forced, due to economic circumstances, to access their financial savings, which obviously impacts their future financial situation and their savings that they'll be able to draw down in the future. Now, Parliament passed various revenue law amendment bills to deal with the tax implications of withdrawing benefits under the scheme. When benefits are withdrawn, either upon retirement or withdraw in the case of emergencies, they become subject to taxation. Now, the amount of tax payable was sadly a great shock to many persons who withdrew funds under the scheme, as they received far less than they were expecting. It's interesting that SARS collected 12 billion rand from tax in two-pot withdrawals, roughly double what it had expected. In addition, 43 billion in two-pot withdrawals added impetus to the economy. The 2025 Revenue Laws Bills introduces further technical amendments dealing with taxation and clarifies the definition of members' interests. This, the ACDP supports. However, we do call for increased public awareness and education campaigns to inform retirement fund members about the features and benefits of the two-pot retirement regime, particularly the tax implications. This will empower individuals to make informed decisions. We also share the concerns that economic growth is required to prevent workers having to access these retirement savings. Lastly, we believe it is scandalous that certain employers did not pay over pension contributions. We agree that there must be criminal prosecutions against such employers. They must also be held civilly liable to compensate the employees affected by this. The ACDP will support this bill. I thank you.
Thank you. Is there a speaker on behalf of the UDM?
UDM supports the bill. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Then I recognize the Honorable Ghana.
Nakhenza mtshama wexitulu ni le ka dokodela mtshama wexitulu Maswanganyi mi temu ku mi kombela hi mi seketela mi nge hi mi seketela Maswanganyi mara hi ndlela leyi the reasons or the conditions that necessitated the introduction of the two-pot system remains with us. And it is the cost of living. If the cost of living does not go down, the need for the two-pot will be there. But here's the thing, and I was talking to Honorable Thring, because sometimes his cycles I run. It's like drinking cold drink during a marathon, comrade runner, Masonda. You think that a cold drink will quench a thirst. It does not, and it will never. So what am I saying, honorable members? Is that whilst a two-pot allows workers to withdraw, it offers an immediate relief, but it's not sustainable in the long run. Because here's the thing, you can maximize the amount of money that you can withdraw. And once you have maximized, the only option is for you to resign and cash out. So we have introduced this so that people do not have to resign so that they cash out. But that need has not left us. The debt at some point will have to come back. Because if you withdrew to pay off the debt, it means that you are not affording your life. That's why you have built on so much debt. Now you have paid off the debt, but your lifestyle has not changed because the cost of living continues to grow. So we need to relook in terms of the economic side of things. Because if those conditions that necessitated the two-pot system to be introduced do not change, then in the medium term, the two-pot system will cease to be a solution. In the long run, we know it's not a solution because people are taking from their retirement. And when they reach that age, they will have nothing left to live on.
Thank you. Dr. Maimane.
This bill speaks to a South African. This is a South African who has been working for much of their lives and now they find themselves in difficult financial positions. Honorable members, let's recognize that the conditions of our country are such that for too many citizens, they find themselves without work. They find themselves living in high levels of poverty, with more than half our citizens living below the upper poverty line. They are confronting an economy that is growing at a very stagnant rate at less than 1% in the last decade. They are living in conditions, as Salga describes them, that many household owners are incapable of being able to pay even municipalities. This is the person we are talking to. And I would like to recommend, honorable members, as we deal with this bill today, we don't deal with it technically, but we deal with answering the question, what is the dignity of this person that we're trying to give to? At first, Deputy Minister and both Deputy Ministers here, I think you'll agree with me. It is high time now that we think hard about how do we help South Africans understand their financial conditions, both in the short term and in the long term. I think financial literacy and financial understanding must be as paramount as knowing your HIV status. It will help you understand your financial transactions over a long period of time. And we need to be able to put that in place. When you read reports about what South Africans end up doing with some of the withdrawals they make. The second is that BOSA wholeheartedly endorses the view of the two-pot system. We're clear about the fact that it is a way for citizens to be able to get short-term relief. But having said that, I think we need to think hard about how we tax the process of this relief. It is common cause that as people make withdrawals, they become shocked to discover that 36% of emergency withdrawals are highly taxed. And so they find themselves in this crisis where they're withdrawing and getting some significant taxation that comes with it. Whilst this might be part of the process of doing this, but what we cannot do as a government, we need to recognize that people are withdrawing in the place of emergency. We cannot say to people, we care about your crisis, and then tax the relief like it is the same as a luxury. So we support it. We support this bill. We support it. And we urge that we use plain language in explaining it to our citizens, as I've spoken earlier. We'd like to make it clear that as Build One South Africa, we think that there should be much more digital accessibility for public, especially young income learners, to learn about retirement policy, etc. So in conclusion, honorable members, let's be clear. This is a withdrawal that workers use against the defense against poverty. So as we support this thing, we're saying let's make it fair taxation on withdrawal. Let's give transparent timelines for future corrections. Let's make a retirement regime that restores public trust and financial dignity. And let's ensure that for many South Africans, as they know what their financial status is, this is not just a mere reform. It is an imperative to restore the dignity of all South Africans.
Thank you. Is there a speaker on behalf of the ATM? If not, then I call on Al Jamaa. The PAC.
PAC supports the bill, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The UAT.
Thank you, Chairperson. The UAT reject the bill.
Thank you. Good. If not, then I recognize the Honourable Dr. Burke.
Mr. Chair, much of the content of my address today has been covered by speakers from the IFP, the PA, RISE, and even ASA. And I wish I could tell the House that the Revenue Laws Amendment Act is interesting, exciting, and vital to our country's future. But unfortunately, it's boring enough to put an accountant to sleep. And while I want to be clear that the DA supports this legislation, there's something sad about us needing it in the first place. In essence, this Revenue Laws Amendment Bill is an attempt at fixing technical mistakes in the so-called two-pot reforms to our retirement system. You'll also remember, Mr. Chair, that this retirement reform is in turn a response to the financial desperation haunting our country. Even for those with jobs, disposable income is a myth, meaning that when emergencies strike, many have no rainy day fund, and based on a decade of nearly zero economic growth, there's now zero hope for many people that they will be able to put aside savings for such emergencies. And so we've ended here with a stopgap solution. The two-pot system, which this bill aims to reinforce, is akin to the cadre class in South Africa, barely noting the gaping hole created by the iceberg of corruption, which is rapidly sinking our country. Looking up just enough from the clinking of cadre cocktails to throw us a life jacket. The equivalent of letting them eat cake, or should I say, give them 2 pots. You see, we in the DA are not against life jackets. It's just that we're aware of the cold water. What does it say about the desperation of our country that we've had 4 million withdrawals in less than a year, with 500,000 South Africans dipping into their pots a second time? Our GDP growth for the start of 2025 is 0.1% or 10 basis points, which begs the question, Mr. Chair, if South Africans didn't tap into their futures to pay for their present, would we now be in a recession? And that brings me to today's bill. This legislation is basically the National Treasury saying, whoops, sorry, there's a few little mistakes, little imperfections in the previous approach. Not to worry though, here's a patch that'll fix those exclusions. Except, it seems that patch itself has problems. The National Treasury has already told the Finance Committee that the law we're reading in front of this House today itself will need fixing on as many as 3 issues. You see, the life jacket more or less works, but this patch will need a patch. It will require more time from Parliament's Finance Committee, which has no shortage of pressing oversight that it needs to conduct. It will require more time from Treasury, who surely have enough other matters, including a comprehensive expenditure review, to focus on. And on that point, I'd like to ask the absent Minister of Finance, and at the risk...
I'm not absent.
Order, honourable members. Honourable Burke, you stand corrected. Please proceed.
I stand corrected, Mr. Chair. The virtually attending Minister of Finance, at the risk of firing shots like the ANC seems to be firing the executive, could you please, Mr. Minister, when you next address this House, use your speaking time to tell us if, in between finding funds for the national monologue, you've actually appointed the agreed-to person to head the spending review. Has that happened? So, Mr. Chair, our country stumbles, trapped inside an economic and ethical crisis. Yet here we are, debating the bill that itself needs fixing. Our pots are not full and running over. They're as hollow as the words of many of our politicians. We live in a country where we now need 2 pots, and unfortunately both of them are empty.
Thank you. Honourable Molefe.
House Chairperson, let's call a spade a spade. The problem in South Africa is that you have the majority of the people who were oppressed by an erstwhile crime against humanity that have been declared by the financial sector to be high credit risk. Credit is not available to them. And so the economy can grow without credit. The economy can grow without small business people being able to borrow money to start another business, small business people being able to borrow money to start a business, especially in a country that has 41% unemployment. The only hope is that those people will somehow get credit and start financing some economic activity. But that is not available. And the reason that is not available, and let's call a spade, is because our financial sector is untransformed. The reason the credit is not available is because the structure of the South African economy is still the structure of the apartheid economy, where black people live in Gugulethu and are high risk, and white people live in Bishop's Court and are low risk. Black people have got money in the banking system, but that money is not available for them to get as credit. So what do we do as this August House, as the National Treasury? We say, those of you that want credit, go and withdraw your own pension. so that you can start the business. No, it doesn't work like that. We need to confront, to take the bull by the horns and say we need bigger access to credit. We need bigger access to credit. And what has happened with this two-pot system is an indication precisely of that problem, of the absence of credit or the unavailability of credit. We cannot take people's future consumption spending today, take their future consumption spending that is in their pension and allow them or encourage them to use it today. What's going to happen when they get old? What's going to happen when they get old and they don't have pensions because they used it in the two-pot system, which later on we are going to patch again and have another technical fix to make it a three-pot system, and so on and so forth. Rather than saying, leave your pension alone, go and get credit. Go and get credit and do whatever you want to do. That is a fundamental problem of our problem in South Africa. And so we need to take on the financial sector on and say that, please, you have to transform and start providing more credit. Honorable Houseperson, there is another crime that is being committed, and that is the employers that are not paying over the money, the pension fund money of their employees over to the pension funds. And that issue came to Parliament, and it has been reported to the police. We've even asked a question in this House, a written question to Minister of Police as to how many employers have been convicted or even charged for not having paid, because our law makes it a criminal offense not to pay over the pension fund money. And the Minister of Police, Senzo Mkhunu, responded to our written question and said, no convictions have been recorded. And so I challenge Honorable Maswangani, that we should revisit this issue. We should take up this issue of the employers that are not paying over people's pensions to the pension funds, and that make sure that Honorable Gwede Mantashe ensures that police investigate these maladministration, and that we do get the conviction of those employers that have not paid over their pension fund contributions to the pension funds. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honorable Seko Harting.
Thank you, House Chair. Honorable Deputy Ministers in the House, and the Chief Whip of the largest party, members of this august House. Let me start off by correcting the fallacy that has been stated here, particularly by my colleagues. Firstly, that the powers and the functions of the Minister of Finance are actually established by the Constitution, Chapter 13 of the Constitution of 1996, adopted in May and amended in October 1996. So it's not an apartheid-created constitution. It is not. It is the powers that are derived from this constitution that was adopted in 1996. No, just to clarify the fallacy, because it looks like you do not understand this constitution and where the powers are coming from. It is important to make it a base for you to start speaking about the powers and functions of the Minister of Finance.
Order, honorable members.
Chair. Secondly, House Chair, House Chair, the second fallacy is in terms of the role that is played by the two-pot system. Because it is important to understand why the stakeholders up until they came to Parliament and to make sure that this two-pot system is actually implemented. The ANC supported it, but it was because of the debt-burdened workers who came and said it would be important for us to have access to the money. So they're actually loaning themselves the money because of the interest that they're going to be paying. Just to clarify you, unfortunately, some of those workers who took their pensions to some of these financial institutions, some took to the building society in Venda, and some proclaimed saviors of these people helped themselves with that, with those savings. I'm just trying to clarify that there are those self-proclaimed saviors who know what happened to those savings by those people. Having said that, House Chair, it is very clear that South Africa is one of the countries with an effective retirement system which covers over 16 million pension fund members, with the private sector having over 12 million members. Our history, which we all know, of colonialism and apartheid, excluded the black majority from the real and true benefits of the pension fund system. Today, as we speak, we have one of the deepened and mature pension fund system which cover all workers of South Africa. This is a significant gain by the African National Congress Democratic Government that has restored the dignity of the workers through a comprehensive social security system that provides social protection for workers who in the past sold their labor only to be retired without adequate pension fund, if any. Since our democratic government led by the African National Congress, we have increased the depth of our capital markets as pension funds invest their resources in the South African economy and abroad. The government pension fund employee, the government pension fund is one of the largest pension fund schemes in the world, enhancing our national savings as a country. Honorable House Chair, we must always bear in mind that the pension fund's assets managed by the Public Investment Corporation, which are currently above 2.6 trillion, are a product of the sweat and toil of our workers, particularly in the public service. It is therefore incumbent that these assets should be contributing to the overall well-being of workers through supporting the growth of industries and capitalism firms that requires investment to protect jobs. The South African labor movement has advocated for the principle of leveraging the pension fund savings to cushion workers from the high cost of living and for their livelihood purposes. The two-pot retirement system has also demonstrated that reforms of the pension fund which enable a withdrawal do not negatively impair the sustainability of pension savings. We must therefore recall that many workers, when faced with various social and economic challenges, have also resorted to withdrawing their pension fund benefits. This places such workers in a precarious position, which result in the state bearing the cost of providing an old age grant, as such retired workers lack adequate pensions, if any, at that point. The introduction of the two-pot system cushioned the impact of the cost of living for many workers who use the fund to reduce their debts and also respond to various household needs. This is not sufficient to resolve. We know this is not sufficient to resolve all the problems of the workers, but it's a significant measure by a caring ANC government through the calls by progressive unions and Labour Federation COSATU. I hope we do understand that. We must further develop other financial mechanisms that enables workers to leverage their savings for the financial products through a guarantee. For example, the Pension Fund Act 19, Section 5, Subsection A and 37D allows for an alternative form of housing finance where the loan is secured by your retirement fund savings instead of mortgage bond. This can be expanded to other critical aspects of life, such as student loans, commercial investment loans, and other financial instruments so much needed. The ANC has always advanced the objective of restrictive measures in order to improve the living conditions of all South Africans. A further focus on other elements that need to be enhanced to enable the two-pot system to be effective and optimal in its benefit for workers is important. This requires a focus on administrative charges that the pension funds charge to its members, which have relatively generated a lot of revenue for pension fund administrators, and the level of tax applied to the two-pot withdrawal, which is currently at the normal tax rate of the workers, which is significant. And a consideration should be made on easing the level of taxation, as this reform serves as a cushion for workers and also has a direct positive impact on tax revenue, as seen in the 2025 budget. This should be considered in a balanced manner in the interest of the workers. We also call on all workers to be circumspect of their consideration of a two-pot withdrawal, as it does impact on the overall pension savings, which are critical for the retirement period. This requires workers to always take a balanced approach based on their financial planning and financial resources. All members, one of the negative impacts of the local government that is not financially sustainable is the reality that the default in various financial obligations, including the employer contributions for their pension funds, endangering the livelihoods of workers as it risks workers losing their benefits. These circumstances are non-compliance with Section 13A of the Pension Fund Act that requires that, notwithstanding any provisions in the rules of a registered fund to the contrary, the employer of any member of such a fund shall pay agreed amounts to the fund in full. The review of the white paper on local government is an important process that the ANC has advanced after the recognition of structural factors impacting the financial sustainability of municipalities. In other circumstances, financial mismanagement in municipalities lead to some municipalities defaulting due to poor prioritization of fiscal leaks. We need to develop mechanisms that ring-fence critical obligations from default, as they have an adverse impact on the livelihoods of municipal workers. The Pension Fund Adjudicator, as a statutory ombud scheme founded in 1998 to resolve pension fund-related complaints in a procedurally fair and economical and expeditious manner, should heighten its work. The Pension Fund Adjudicators received a total of 2,349 inquiries on the two-pot system and 239 complaints, with 163 matters resolved, and they need to therefore continue to resolve those issues. The relatively low levels of complaints reflect that the two-pot system was effectively implemented by various pension funds. The private sector is also a major contributor of non-compliance with Section 13A, particularly companies in the security sector, which is also constituted by a high number of low-income earners, and this requires a sectoral focus to address specific limitations in the sector and resolve the precarious conditions of security guards who work under risky and fragile conditions. The African National Congress supports the Revenue Laws Amendment Bill, which is more of a technical bill to enhance the administration of the two-pot system. This includes aspects that relate to seeding date and ensure defined application by respective funds, and changes in definitions of the components of the system, and to introduce a proportional reduction of the components of the fund in the circumstances of a withdrawal. The ANC will continue to advance measures to transform the financial sector, to work for the nation and serve as a source of creation of an equitable society. And as we continue to strengthen our system and transform the financial sector, the National Treasury ought to increase its developmental focus on private pension funds to optimize the social and economic impact as reflected by the role of the PIC. And therefore, the ANC supports the bill. Yalebo.
Thank you. The last speaker is the Honourable Sir Rupin, the Deputy Minister of Finance.
Thank you very much, House Chair. The Chief Whip of the MKP has asked me to be brief, so I will be as quick as I can. Chair, I think it's important that we understand that this bill has a fair amount of history to it and where it comes from. It's not a vacuum. It wasn't just put together last year. It was former Minister Mboweni during his, I think, final MTBPS that floated the idea of creating this in the context of COVID, when household savings were entirely depleted and we needed to enable people to be able to access emergency funding. So the system was launched in September 2024, and it has had an impact on the economy and the people of our country so far, because it's revealed that there is a demand for this kind of reform. And it's clear that we needed this flexibility to prevent workers from quitting their jobs, because a mere 9% of retirement fund members choose to preserve their retirement fund savings when they change jobs, and we've got to change that. So the two-parts reform has prevented countless workers from resigning just to access their pension funds. This, in turn, has helped provide necessary financial support for them to respond to arising emergencies for financial pressures. And by mandating that part of savings must be preserved until retirement, we're also trying to provide financial security and stability as individuals reach retirement age. I think Honourable Maimane made the point strongly about financial literacy. And that is why it's important that we ensure that there's sufficient preservation in the system so that people don't deplete their financial savings for retirement in their entirety. So we seek to balance short-term financial flexibility with long-term retirement security. We've allowed families facing financial emergencies to now have dignified options rather than taking on expensive and destructive household debt. And this came about because, unfortunately, in this post-COVID environment, for too many South Africans, their only savings account is their pension fund. And the environment of low growth, this is obviously deeply troubling. Now, what are we trying to achieve with these amendments? Firstly, we're fixing the date confusion for older members. The government became aware that several funds drafted their rules to reference 31 August 2024 and communicate to this date to their members. Members of Provident funds who were 55 or older on 1 March 2021 were caught in some administrative confusion. Some funds calculated their seeding amounts based on 31 August, and others used the date that they opted in. This created uncertainty and inconsistency. The proposed amendments provide a clear solution, but providing flexibility by allowing both approaches to be valid. If your fund calculated on 31 August 2024 and you acted on that information, it stands. If your fund used the opt-in date, that is also valid. Now, why does this matter? For one, it means that fund members or administrators acting in good faith are not unduly penalized. And by providing legal certainty, we want to ensure that everyone is protected. The members wanting to make withdrawals, as well as administrators and managers of pension funds that want to stick to the letter of the law. Secondly, we want to ensure that there are fair maintenance deductions. One of the aims of the proposed amendments is to clarify the law under which the two-part system operates. When maintenance orders are deducted from pension fund benefits under Section 37D of the Pension Fund Act, The law was not clear as to how this should work across the three components of the two-part system. Our solution is to allow for maintenance deductions to be applied proportionally across all three parts, the vested, savings, and retirement components. This ensures fairness and consistency so that children and former spouses, depending on maintenance payments, can get clarity and certainty. No one should be disadvantaged because of these technical and legal gaps. Thirdly, we're aligning technical references to make sure that while there are some minor but important discrepancies that existed between the Revenue Laws Amendment Bill and the Taxation Laws Amendment Bill regarding the same provisions, we align these two bills to prevent confusion or legal challenges, because legal coherence protects fund members from costly disputes and delays. Now, there were some various issues raised in the debate, and I want to respond to some of them. The first is on firms not paying over their pension fund contributions. This must be dealt with, and the rule of law must run its course. There was a criticism against the Treasury and the Minister of Finance, particularly in relation to municipalities not paying their funds, and an accusation that the Minister is doing nothing. This is not true. The Minister got a report on 18 municipalities that had not been paying their pension contributions and has invoked Section 38 2C of the MFMA and Section 2162 of the Constitution. Of course, when we invoke these matters, then the Minister gets criticized for going after municipalities, but quite rightly, it's to make sure that they pay over their pension fund contributions. Now, this bill was never intended as a substitute for growth. It was, as I said, proposed during the COVID era to help people access emergency funding as household savings were depleted during that pandemic era. It's for catastrophic emergencies so people can withdraw funding without destroying their retirement savings. So we implemented this reform. We've been monitoring its impact. We're listening to stakeholders, and we're making adjustments to ensure that it works fairly and more efficiently. And yes, we are patching, and some of the patches will need patches, but that is the iterative nature of doing something the country has never done before. And the truth is that this has delivered some measurable gains, and given the trade-offs inherent to any policy reform, it provides a solution to a real issue that South Africans faced. The initial withdrawals of up to 40 billion rand provided relief to millions of households without destabilizing financial markets and the broader pension fund landscape. This reform has allowed a form of debt relief that steers those in need of short-term cash away from high-interest debts and loan sharks and other things out there, and in the process of improving their financial health and their household finances. The gains may be incremental, but they are real. And the gains have been made while preserving as much retirement security and reducing job resignations as possible while enabling people to access emergency funds. So I urge the House to support these technical amendments with the same spirit of collaboration that made the original two-part system as initially proposed by Minister Mboweni possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable members, that concludes this debate. Are there any objections to the Revenue Laws Amendment Bill being read a first time? Honourable Reddy.
Thank you, House Chair. The Umkhonto Wesizwe Party will be voting against the Revenue Laws Amendment Bill, and we will be calling for division. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please record the objection of EFF.
We'll record it, and you'll have your opportunity during the division as well. A division having been called, honourable members, the bells will be rung for 5 minutes.
Allowing the House to reconsider their vote. That's what second reading is all about.
No, we don't make things on the fly. They are there. Because I can hear you that you're just on the fly.
You can't call for the division. That's right.
You can indicate your objective. The division has already been.
Order, honourable members, please take your seats. Honourable members, the Speaker has determined that in accordance with the rules, a manual voting procedure will be used for this division. Firstly, in order to establish a quorum, I would like to request the table to confirm that we have the requisite number of members physically present in the chamber and on the virtual platform to take this decision. Party whips will then be given an opportunity to confirm the number of their members present and indicate if they vote for or against the question. A member who wishes to abstain or vote against the party vote may do so by informing the chair. Honourable members, having confirmed that the requisite quorum is present, we will now proceed